Want to thank Iowa Smokehouse and their awesome products, folks, as we continue through a busy fall and winter sports season. Be sure you gear up with Iowa Smokehouse. Tasting is believing with their flavorful meat sticks, their beef jerky, their salsas, their ketchups. They've even got bacon ketchup. And yes, it goes great with whatever perhaps you've got in the glass. Maybe it's a good brew or maybe it's a bourbon. Or something else tasty. Use the code Hawkeyes at iowasmokehouse.com at checkout. Use the code Hawkeyes at checkout. iowasmokehouse.com. You'll get 15% off your order. And be assured, folks, when you support Iowa Smokehouse, you support from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Brad Van Meter and his team down at State Farm. Certainly appreciate Brad being with us. He was with us last year. He's with us this year. Again, if you appreciate the content here, gives Brad an opportunity to serve you and your family and your insurance needs and how important it is to be covered well in society that we live in today. They offer auto, home, renters, business, and life insurance, and his team, just a small three-member team, I should say. And boy, they offer great services, great coverage for you personally. Whatever you need, they'll help you navigate through the complex insurance world. And of course, State Farm is known as the largest auto insurance company in the nation. And they've got rates right now lower than, I'm told ever before. So give Brad an opportunity to serve you. And he's saving people lots of money. 515-256-6480. That's 515-256-6480. Or visit him online at bradvadmeter.com. All right. I'm pleased to be joined by none other than Coach Don Patterson, I think. Nope, Coach is gone. Wow, that was short-lived. All right, Don must. You know what Don was probably doing. Let's bring in
Alex. You know what I'm probably doing. God, what's he probably doing?
What am I hearing?
Going for? What's up?
You hear
an echo? Not really. Not on my end.
Okay. Gotta take you out here because all I can hear is echoing, Alex. That's all I hear. Please, somebody in the chat, tell me I'm not going crazy. We just lost Don. He went black and then just completely left. And then all I could hear was myself talking. Baker Boy says, yes, major echo. I'm assuming that's on Alex's end. Let's see if James can help us here. By the way, you're all the callers are participating in the show this evening. You're calling the Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. We appreciate Iowa Smokehouse making our phone calls and our StreamYard calls all possible as we recap Iowa's 10-7 win. Let's go to James on our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. James, tell me I'm not going crazy.
Let me see if it's there. I don't hear it now.
Ah, beautiful. How are you, James?
I'm good. One thing, first off, I seen some in the comments talking about Caleb Brown having a catch. Caleb Brown was 81 this whole game because Cooper played offense. So for those people that were confused, he was 81 because Cooper was playing offense. So they can't have 2 threes on the field at the same time. So he changed his number.
Right. You're right. And I saw that at halftime or at tweeted out. I believe somebody in Iowa media tweeted that out. But
good catch by him though. That was a great catch by him to help us. Like obviously it's his first catch as a Hawkeye, but he could have a bigger catch. But that was a pretty big catch for your first catch as a Hawkeye to get us in that position to help us win that game.
Well, I think we can acknowledge once again that multiple things can be true at the same time. It's ridiculous, James, that was his first catch at Iowa. Okay.
Yeah, I agree with you, but I'm saying like for a first catch, it was
absolutely
a
huge.
Big one.
They're probably in overtime right now as we speak. They're probably in like overtime number 4, floundering for a 2-point conversion because each team ended up scoreless. or at least going 3-3, 3-3, 3-3 for 3 overtime. So, no, that was huge. Give Caleb Brown a lot of credit. Get him involved more. And I'd love to see him as number 81 moving forward. I don't know why we need to revert back to him being number 3 and complicating things. Cooper DeJean playing on offense, whether it be, I mean, I'd like to get him involved more than 2 plays, but just that little wrinkle helps this offense because of his playmaking ability.
Well, I think I told you, tweeted you after in the DMs that, that helped us set up a first down, though, because, he got 8 yards, right? And then they kept him in the next play. And when they ran the motion, they thought he was going to get the ball again, so everybody shifted that way, so it helped us get the first down because we got, 5 yards off of it after that. So, when he's in the game, he's going to be the focal point of the defense because they know how impactful he is.
Been calling for that for, 2 years now, James?
Yeah.
And certain people, I mean, I remember one guy, and he'll remain nameless. I don't even remember the guy's name. But somebody that called into the show regularly last year literally told me, I'm not watching your show anymore because you keep talking about these stupid ideas with Cooper DeJean. He's not playing offense in North City. Well, he played offense today, and 2 plays, but you saw the positive production. 8 yards for this Iowa offense is like 20-plus yards for any other offense. And then you mentioned using him as kind of a decoy, motion back across the field, and it produced a positive run up the middle. Continuing to utilize that. They need to continue. That's not something that I hope, they showed today and then, goes by the wayside for the rest of the year. That's something that, again, best playmaker on the field and get him involved. And frankly, I hope that this catch by Caleb Brown, I know it's just one catch. He had a couple targets today, but I hope the catch from Caleb Brown gets him going and gets him some confidence because they need his speed and his athleticism.
I did feel like we used the wide receivers a little bit. Obviously, Nico had a catch. Deontay had a catch, too. So, Deacon made some bad throws, but he also made some solid throws in that thing. But the turf was annoying me. But I think it kind of helped us a little bit. That stop on 4th down was probably the stuff. Goal line stand was probably one of the biggest plays of the game, too, because you don't stop them there, you give up another touchdown. I don't know if they would give another touchdown, though, because the field position might have been different. You know what I'm saying? Where, they got
Still
the...
huge. Still huge.
I'm saying I agree with you, but I don't know if they give up a touchdown there, if they give up another one in retrospect of it put the ball on the 1, so we had a short punt and they had the return, if that makes sense. If they scored there, it might not have gotten another touchdown. But
let's add Coach Don Patterson back into the mix. Don, I'm assuming when you jumped off right as soon as I talked about Brad Van Meter, I'm assuming you gave him a quote and you're switching your insurance policy over to Brad. So appreciate you doing that, first of all. But Don, talk a little bit before we get into the nitty-gritty of this football game and a couple of the wrinkles we saw on offense and, of course, the struggles we still continue to see on offense, the tremendous defense from Phil Parker's unit. Can you talk a little bit about the field? Is that a result with the issues that we saw down near the goal line? Of course, you don't often see a stance like Iowa. I flash back to the Syracuse game years ago, but that was quite a stance from the Iowa defense, but we shouldn't have that type of an issue with the field. Is that purely the result of the baseball turf being different than a football field?
I suppose, Corey. I couldn't help but feel, realizing where the turf was the most torn up, it was on about the 2-yard line. So that's where their quarterback was taking snaps and trying to move forward. So I couldn't help but feel that was a little advantage to us on that goal line stand. But
there's a reason why there's also a reason why it was tore up, right?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, the fact that Iowa continued to make them run plays from the same spot in the field. Isn't that
very, very true? It only got worse over time. With each pass and play, it got worse.
Right.
But you think about it, they had 1st and goal at the 2. They snapped it 4 times and gained maybe 5 feet, 4.5, 5 feet. That's all. So, and you heard me say, because I lost a game one time to Youngstown that same way, I said, never again will I do that if it's down to 1 play. Because I don't want to be at the mercy of the line judge and the head linesman. And in their defense, it's hard for them to see where forward progress is. But I give a lot of credit to our line surge. We didn't get driven off the ball at all, and that was the difference.
I got a couple more things. One thing I was thinking about too, for Troy Taylor struggling a bit, I could be part of the sight lines. You know how they say basketball games, when you play in a football stadium, the site, when they played in Indianapolis for the one tournament, I think it was the NCAA tournament, I was we're struggling to shoot because it's so much bigger. It looks different out of there, so he might have struggled a bit with the sight lines, kind of trying to line up where he's at a little bit. You know what I mean? How it looks different because it's open. If that makes sense.
That makes sense to you, Don? The layout of the field, you think maybe affected Tory Taylor a little bit?
That's kind of hard to imagine, honestly.
The only thing I would say
It was just an
is,
idea. I don't know, because I know in basketball some people say sight lines might throw them off. So maybe if the
Well, here's
sight
what I
Well,
lines
think
you're
are
trying to put a basketball through a basket too. I mean, it's, if you're punting a football, it really shouldn't matter much about what the surroundings are.
yeah, and here's what I'll say,
I mean,
James.
true.
This is what I think there's a better chance. I'm not making excuses for Torrey Taylor. I'm
Yeah,
sure
no.
he'd be the first one to say he had some unorthodoxly bad punts today. But I think what's also fair to say is Chicago's called the Windy City for a reason. All right. And if you know where Wrigley Field is, right, really close to the lake, right on the lake, basically.
Yeah.
So, and it's known for being a windy stadium, right, Don? So, I mean, it's going to
Yes.
be a different type of wind and movement than maybe he's used to. But I'm not making an excuse for him. He needed to play better. That's what makes the final kick. I don't want to jump the gun here, Don, but the kick by Drew Stevens, so impressive, is making it cool, calm, and collected. And I hope that I hope that Iowa fans recognize how good Drew Stevens is, because I think he's underappreciated. I know he's just a sophomore, a lot of acclaim, and
He's going to end up kicking on Sunday.
absolutely, and a lot of well-due acclaim, very much deserved acclaim toward Torrey Taylor, because he's a fabulous punter. But I think sometimes Drew Stevens is overshadowed a bit. I know he missed the 53-yarder off the upright, but I made the comment and tweeted it out there before that drive, Don. I was confident if they got him within 60-yard field goal, he was going to make a game winner. And that last kick was good from 60. I mean, I don't think I've ever seen a 52-yard field goal from this. I mean, literally straight on. It didn't move at all. It was like an arrow just straight down. I've never seen that.
Comment. You've always heard me say, I've always said this to my kickers through the years. I don't know much about place kicking, but the reason we always talk about splitting the uprights, that ball was literally right down the middle.
There was no doubt at all.
Yeah, it didn't draw, it didn't fade, it went straight.
I wish I could hit a drive like that, Don.
You and me both.
One more thing. I have a question for Don. I kind of want to get your opinion. I think I DM'd you about it too. After halftime, when they came out at halftime, the lady said she talked to Kirk Ferentz, and he said the reason Cooper DeJean was on offense is because they couldn't get anything going. We couldn't get anything going the whole time. Like, isn't that, like, why would... obviously, I get why that's the ultimate factor, but, like, you haven't been getting things going for, like, 5 weeks. Now is the time where you're, like, haven't got anything going?
I haven't been getting anything going for, like, 3 years.
Yeah, true. For, like, 3 years. And now is the idea where you say, oh, I haven't got nothing going, so I'm going to put Cooper DeJean in the game. That just made no sense to me. Where it's like...
Before we address Cooper DeJean on the field, if you're calling the call-in line, which, by the way, is 515-635-1601, I don't know how many times I can say this, do not hang up, okay? You have to be put on hold. So do not hang up, because if you hang up, you're going to fall back behind in the queue. All right, we got people here on Streamer. We got people on the phone. 515-635-1601. You can also click the Streamer link. Go ahead, Don.
I'm just going to make one comment, Corey. Correct me if I'm wrong, but if they're on hold, they can still listen to the show. They simply have to wait for their turn to talk.
Well, that's the challenging part, I think, for some people. If they're on the phone line and they're watching on their phone, then that makes it a little bit more difficult. You're watching on a computer or a tablet or on your television. Yeah, just call in with your phone, and the phone's going to be on hold. You can have it on speaker. You're not going to hear anything until you're on the air. But if you're calling on StreamYard, of course, you can continue to watch the show.
So that's another looking somewhere other than on your phone. Make the phone call to the show on your phone and watch on some other device.
Right.
I just wanted to get an opinion on that, where it's like he said that, but it's like you've been struggling for 3 years. So why is now the factor why you put him in? Because, we haven't got nothing going. You haven't got anything going all year.
Well, frankly, James, in Kirk's defense, what is he supposed to say?
No, I get that.
Well,
but
listen, what's he going to say? Well, we finally got our heads on straight. We finally caved to the fans' pressure. First of all, that's not what he did, right? They finally decided to do something different. But what's he going to say? Don, the reason why they needed to do something like that, and the reason they've needed to do that for a while, in my opinion, is because the offense isn't good. They don't have enough playmakers, and they waited way too long to do it, in my opinion, and they probably didn't do it enough today, but hopefully this is a small sample size and things to come in the next 3 weeks.
And let's not forget, Corey, that we've been thin at cornerback, and we're talking about our punt returner and our primary punt cover man.
They are still thin at cornerback. TJ Hall is still out. DeShaun Lee, I believe, is healthy, but that helps having DeShaun back. And Jameson Hines, I believe, is available, who's, he had playing time last year at the end of the season. So maybe they feel a little bit more comfortable with health now, James. But I agree. I think they should have utilized Cooper DeJean's skill set last year.
I just found it funny how he said that now when you've been 8 weeks through this, or whatever 8 weeks through the season, and he's like, "Oh, we haven't got nothing going, so we decided to put him in the game." Like, you haven't got anything going for a year, 2 years, 3 years, so like,
I
why
know.
not? But it was a good win. At least a win's a win. And Minnesota losing helps a little bit, but obviously, we still got rough. Rutgers is not no slouch, and it's gonna be a tough game. But if you can get past that one, I think you have a very good chance at looking into the next two after that. So
Well,
you take it one game at a time.
Let's remember this. Every game, I made the comment last week, and I think, Don, you agreed with it. Every game from here on out is going to be close. They're not blowing anybody out playing this
No,
time.
yeah, I agree with you, but I feel like more comfortable about our chances against Illinois and Nebraska than I feel against Rutgers. Just because, like, I don't know, I feel like Rutgers is a little bit better than them, but I feel like we're not going to beat any team. We also, like you said before, we could lose to every team. We could go 0-3, you could go 3-0. You never know.
Yeah, like I say, if you had to, I would have no idea who to predict Iowa losing to, because they play at home against Rutgers and Illinois. They get Nebraska on the road. All three of those teams have proven they can lose and play poorly. All three of those teams have proven they can win. I mean, Rutgers competed well against Ohio State for a stretch, but then you have Minnesota losing to Illinois today, which changes the Big Ten West race. And, of course, Illinois, with the win over Minnesota, makes that game look that much more difficult. Don, just your thoughts on the remaining schedule.
Yeah, you're exactly right, Corey. We're capable of winning all three. We're also capable of stubbing our toe more than once.
Yeah.
But
anything else?
No, I was just saying it was a good game, and happy to get the win. And obviously, it wasn't fun to watch that game sometimes. But one more thing before I get off is just like they said and like you said, you remember when you said Brian was going to coach with pride, Brian was going to do this, Brian was going to do that. They said the same exact thing where he was like, I'm still going to coach with pride. Like, this is my last 4 games coaching with my dad. Like, I still want to, you know what I mean? Like, still want to try out my hardest. So, like, he's at least trying, maybe to the best of his abilities, with what he has, at least in his eyes, to help us try to win games. So that's at least most important. He's not just mailing it in, because they told him, you're done after this year. I think that's
if he was mailing it in, if he'd mailed it in, I'd be getting rid of him on the spot. No, I don't think he's done that. I don't think
for sure. I'm just saying some coaches might have that mentality where it's like, oh, you want to get rid of me. I don't like you no more. But it was a good win, and I'll talk to you next week, and hopefully we can get one next week too.
Thank you, James. Yeah, I was, I made the comment on Twitter again, and people are tired of me saying this, but about midway through the game, Don, I made the comment, this offense is an absolute travesty. I mean, it's just so unbelievable. I've never, ever seen anything like it. And we say this every week, but every week I'm that much more amazed that you can have a Big Ten level offense be, I don't even know what the right word is, just ineptitude is all I can think. Just ineptitude. And yet they win games. It's just incredible. And you could argue they should be 8-1 right now because, and I know a lot of people feel this way, that Minnesota call should have never happened. The fair catch call against Cooper DeJean should have never happened. They should be 8-1 right now. I think this defense is every bit as good as it was last year. I think there's a lot to uncover and a lot to digest about what this defense has been this year, specifically in relation to Nick Jackson. I think he's been one of the more important players in this football team, given what they lost last year at linebacker and how good he's been along with Jay Higgins. And, of course, the play of Cooper DeJean and the guys up front have gotten better each game, even without the leadership of Noah Shannon. So there's so much to talk about. We're going to spend the better part of the next 2 hours discussing it. Lemansky, appreciate the super chat. Have a couple of sodas on me or whatever. Thank you, Lemansky. Big C and Big Donnie. I mean, that's you. Don. I think you're Big Donnie here. Special teams and defense, I love you. I simply get snacks when the offense has the ball. I will say I had some pizza today during the game, Don. It was quite tasty. Did you enjoy any? What do you do during the game? Do you eat it all?
I ate during halftime today. I had a nice bowl of chili with Fritos and cheese and onions, and it was delicious.
Sounds good. No cornbread, though.
No cornbread. Okay. All you need is Fritos. That's all you need.
It's the Fritos. Okay. Okay, let's see if we can go back to our Iowa Smoke. Thank you, Lemansky, again for the super chat. And again, I'm going to throw the number up here in a little bit. You'll see the message from Iowa Smokehouse along the bottom of the screen. But once again, the number to call into our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line is 515-635-1601. I'll also throw the link to join via StreamYard up in the live chat. And if you've never done that before, you can join. Just sign in with your Facebook or your YouTube account, your Google account, and you can hop on the show with Coach Patterson and myself. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Alex, did we get the echo fixed?
You tell me. I wasn't hearing anything. I put on some headphones, so hopefully it's all good to go.
So far, so good, sir.
Perfect.
Good.
Excuse me. So it's been a while since I've been able to call in. Obviously, wedding and then the honeymoon, and then I was over in Germany for a work trip, which was during the Minnesota game. Which that game ended I was in Munich at 2:30 a.m. and I had to be up the next day to go to essentially to work. So didn't get much sleep that night. But anyways, before
it's all working out. Okay. You still got the wedding ring on, Alex?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure we're all still good there.
No, everything's good. Everything's still good on the home front, so that's always a good sign. Well, and Don, I think you may have heard this, but you can, and Corey, you probably heard it too, is you can either be right or you can be happy. So try to live by that. But even just before I get into the game with the notes that I took, games should never be played on a baseball field. The amount of commercial breaks that they took to fix that one spot on the field is ridiculous. I think that should be one reason why games should never be played on a baseball field. I like the idea of it, but if you're starting to have that many issues to where the field's getting tore up like that, at what you're kind of losing, and then you risk players' injuries. And I know Bo Stevens got carted off. I think 2 plays after Iowa had that goal line stand, and they were trying to get it out of the shadow of their own end zone. So speaking of injuries, they said Logan Jones was out. He said he was in a walking boot. I didn't see anything like that. Like for players that were out, I didn't see him on the list. So I'm kind of curious if you guys knew anything about that. Plus Caleb Johnson wasn't in the game. They noted that he didn't have any offensive snaps, at least from what I could tell.
I know nothing about either. I'll admit that. I don't even think neither of them were on the injury report pregame.
Not that I saw.
Yeah, I don't know. Well, I'm sure Tom Kakert, we expect him to jump on here in a little bit. I'm sure he can give us an idea. I'm assuming we're going to get Tom. I don't know the media procedure there at Wrigley Field, and I have not heard from Tom, but I'm assuming he's still jumping on here in a little bit. But yeah, I'll be anxious to hear. Those are obviously 2 important players for the offense to be able to. Really, the run game has been the only source of sanity over the last 3 to 4 weeks. So those guys are important.
But also, just games on Peacock should never happen. Coverage, I don't like the coverage for Peacock. And then I kind of going back to the baseball side of things. I don't know what your guys' thought. Don, you may have more insight on this, but what's your general thought of having both teams on the same sideline? Yeah, I don't care for it either.
No, it's not. It's not meant to be played that way.
No, and if you get 2 teams on a baseball, or you have to set 2 teams up like that, if you get 2 teams that are just kind of real chippy with each other, you're asking for trouble at that point. So, but that's just my 2 cents on that baseball field. But kind of going, and Don, you're an offensive coach, or you were an offensive coordinator. My question: so when Cooper got in on offense, what kind of conversation is that with Phil Parker? Like, is it hey, we want to use Cooper for a couple plays, and then it's just can Phil say no? Granted, Phil, obviously is the defensive coordinator, not the head coach, but it's like, can Phil say, hey, Cooper's, we're thin at corner. If he gets hurt, then we're going to be, if you look at the Nebraska game last year, Cooper got hurt and Nebraska was able to kind of pick apart some of our younger cornerbacks. Trey Palmer, got two big explosive plays for touchdown. That's how Nebraska ended up winning that game. So I don't know if you've had to run into that situation, but do you know what kind of conversation is had, whether you have a guy that you want to use on offense that's normally on defense or vice versa?
Can I just real quick answer the question for Don, and then Don, you answer the question? I don't normally do this, and you acknowledged it, Alex. Kirk Ferentz is the head coach.
Yeah.
So if he wants to play Cooper DeJean on offense, he's going to play Cooper DeJean on offense. That's not. Am I right, Don?
I would imagine that Kirk simply checked with Phil just to alert him You know, we practice these plays during the week, at least a couple of plays we know. And just so you're aware, we're going to go with Cooper this next series of downs. And Phil would say, okay, I got it. You know, let's face it, it's 50 degrees. Cooper's in outstanding condition. It's not going to be an issue unless we play him for 20 snaps. So a couple of snaps.
Like a Travis Hunter.
Right.
Yeah. Going and then I can't think of the last caller you just had on, but he made the comment about when Kirk was asked about Cooper playing, he said, "Well, we couldn't get anything going on offense," you know. And I think a lot of people were asking too about what about a quarterback change too. You know, I go back to that interception where Iowa was not in the red zone, but they were, you know, if anything, they could have gotten a field goal out of it. Deacon threw a bad pass. Nico, I think he was trying to hit Nico. Nico had inside pressure on Nico, and Deacon's supposed to throw that ball outside. He threw it inside, grabbed the defender, get his head around to spot the ball, but it was a bad pass. I mean, I don't think that was all on Nico. That was a bad pass by Deacon. You know, if you're going to throw that pass, you throw it outside to the outside shoulder, and if he misses, well, it's out of bounds. No harm, no foul. You live to play another down on that. And then really the few other things I have is Kirk made a comment before the game. The lady who had asked him, the field reporter had asked him about how to get the run going. And he says, well, we got to catch balls. You know, we got to catch the passes. And they made the comment of 14 runs, 3 passes. So it felt like it was kind of contradictory to Kurt say, hey, yeah, to run the ball better, we need to complete more passes. And we're running it more than 80% of the time. So,
yeah, one of the first notes I made that we had run the ball 7 out of the first 8 snaps. So we were trying to establish the run and trying to be sure that the ball, that the game wasn't going to be settled in Deacon's hands. We were going to try to minimize his role in the game if we could afford to do that. That was clearly what we were trying to do to start the game. If we could establish the run, then maybe we'd finish the day by throwing 10 times.
Yeah, and it kind of felt like after the Minnesota game with Deacon having 3 turnovers, 2 fumbles, and a pick, it felt like they were playing very conservatively. I don't know if anyone else noticed that, but it felt like with Deacon and his 3 turnovers against Minnesota, it was just like, hey, we don't want to even, attempt to pass because we don't want bad things to happen.
I think you were too busy at your wedding to have watched the Wisconsin game, Alex. Go back and watch the Wisconsin game.
I was able to watch it on the flight.
Yeah, for the most part, this has been the approach, especially when Iowa has the lead, which they did today. This has been the approach since almost the beginning with Deacon Hill. They don't trust Deacon Hill. And at one point, and I'll say this, at one point in the game, I don't know if it was after was there a punt return? I think it was a punt block, right? The Ontario Thompson punt block, and eventually they ran it in for a touchdown. Or excuse me, there was a throw, right? He threw on the play action.
He threw the pass to Stranga. That's what caused the touchdown.
But that drive, I don't know if anybody caught it on the TV cameras, but Brian Ferentz was talking to Deacon Hill as he was about to trot out in the field. And I tell you, I don't normally read this far into body language or facial expressions, Don, but I swear Brian Ferentz had the look of, just don't screw this up, Deacon. Because they were at like the 15, 20-yard line. That was almost the look he gave, which is not the look you want your quarterback and your quarterback's coach and your coordinator to be giving your starting quarterback, but that's what I felt. I don't feel like this offense right now, the staff has much of any confidence in Deacon Hill. And that's even more reason why I can't imagine why you wouldn't entertain seeing if one of the other 2 quarterbacks can do something during a game. But
I did see something about Marco Lainez being number 2.
Correct. And that was demonstrated through not only pregame warmups, but you saw, Don, we saw Lainez on the sidelines talking to Deacon, and of course Labus had the green hat on today. I did not see Lainez with a green hat on, which does that tell us that he was clearly the guy ready to go in?
That's certainly an indication. It doesn't guarantee that that's the case. I would say maybe Lainez had You're pretty sure he didn't have a green cap anytime during the day.
I don't know
Today.
that. I just whenever I saw Lainez on the sideline, he did not.
Well, I'm pretty sure there've been other times when they were both wearing green caps. That's the only reason I bring it up.
Yeah,
So
but that
I
was the
don't know.
report I did see. Chad Lights Go, the Des Moines Register, tweeted that out pregame. I, of course, was not there at Wrigley, but it sounds like Lainez, for some reason, was the number 2. And maybe Labus is dinged up, or maybe Lainez has passed him.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Well, what's the upside, right?
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
But that's all I have. It's nice to be back home. Nice to be able to chat with you guys on this. And hey, Hawkeye wins regardless of how ugly it is. It's still a W in the win. Still a W, still in the win column. Hopefully we'll be back on next week with the win over Rutgers. They gave Ohio State pretty much all they could handle for about a half, and then Ohio State realized, hey, we're Ohio State. But yeah, Rutgers is, I think, probably our scariest game left on the schedule. Illinois has its issues. They're pretty inconsistent. Nebraska, their defense is really, really good. Their offense is atrocious. They turn the ball over a lot, which is something Iowa feasts on. So, obviously you take one game at a time. I think all the next 3 games will be, pretty difficult. I do think, though, if we can get past Rutgers, the Illinois, I would feel a little better about the Illinois and Nebraska matchup. We follow the rest. Rutgers, it gets a little scary. Obviously, with Big Ten championship implications, obviously better bowl seeding as well. So, but that's all I have. Again, nice chatting you guys. Keep up the great work and go Hawks.
Thank you, Alex. And I know there's the question that was thrown up here in the chat, Don, from Tim. And I as I'll say each and every post-game show, if you want to guarantee your comment gets up on the screen, throw in a super chat. But I did notice this one from Tim, and it's a good question. Why was Cooper not in the game later, even when they were 1st and 20? Speaking of 1st and 20, I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place, Don, but man, I tell you, Kyle Rudolph, former Vikings tight end Kyle Rudolph, was on the call today for Peacock, and he was with Hawkeye Paul Burmeister. And this is a quote from Kyle Rudolph. This offense is just not built to overcome a 10-yard penalty. That might be the most deflating thing I've ever heard. And he's absolutely right, but this is a player who played the game of football here just a couple of years ago. He literally said this offense is not built to overcome a 10-yard penalty. And he's right. That's the sad. He was right.
Yeah, there's some truth to that. Let's face it. One reason they're not, if it's an obvious passing situation, 1st and 20, you might think of as an obvious passing situation, then our difficulties with pass protection are enhanced. I'll say it that way. They have a better chance to sack us if they can tee off in an extra long situation. That's one. And the other possibility, of course, is if the ball goes up in the air, we don't have great confidence that it's going to go to one of our guys. That's where we are right now. And so for that reason, it's not hard for me to suspect, especially when eating up clock would count for something. I think we were already up 7-0, weren't we? I believe.
They were 7-0.
So, a 7-point lead, if you got an Iowa defense, feels like a 14-point lead almost. You feel pretty secure with something beyond a field goal.
So, Don, I guess I go back to that situation. It's 1st and 20. So they get a holding call on a 1st and 10. They go 1st and 20. They gave up virtually, right? I mean, in some regards, you could argue that they ran the ball 3 times. There was plenty of booing from the Hawkeye fans in Wrigley Field. But, I can understand why. I get it. Was it the right call? Probably. But isn't it also fair to say that's really sad? That's really sad that is the situation we're in, where it's 1st and 20 and you're just done.
Well, there are certain calls that do have a chance that are not what you call high risk calls. 1st and 20 is kind of hard to imagine that they're going to go with any kind of pressure look. If anything, they're even more likely to play zone. Good time to run a screen pass. Screen pass always has a chance. Unlike running a screen pass against man coverage, we tried to do that one time today and got hit in the head. Well, that doesn't surprise me that we would, but against the zone defense, you do have a chance. You know, that's a safe play you can run. They might go for 20. It's possible. That's one. Other options, of course, throw the ball behind the line. You saw us late in the game, ran a little throw behind the line of scrimmage to Nico. Again, just those are safe plays that have a chance at least. We're getting the ball out in space. Maybe we can make a guy miss. Maybe a throw behind the line of scrimmage can be worth 10 or 15 yards. Maybe. It's got a better chance than another run, probably.
Is it I mean, first and 20, did you, during your career, were there times where you were up one score on first and 20 and you run the ball 3 times? Have you ever done that?
No, I don't think so.
So I guess that's what I'm speaking to, Don. I understand.
Unless the clock was really, really low. You know, if we're protecting a 7-point lead and we're down to the last 2-3 minutes of the game, yeah, maybe then, yeah. But even then, you think about a draw play, you think about a screen pass, you think about other plays that are secure plays.
Right. So why not? Why didn't we see Cooper DeJean after those 2 plays in the first half?
I don't know. I was certainly hoping to see him again. And somebody brought up a good point with the text. They said, even if you put him back out there as a decoy, that's got value.
Right.
You've heard me talk in the past about using a defensive player as a decoy. That doesn't require any work. Doesn't require a lot of energy on his part. He's not going to get tackled with the ball because he's not going to get the ball.
Right. All right, let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. We have got Tyler on the phone. Tyler, welcome.
Hi, how are you guys doing today?
Doing good, Tyler. And before you start in, I have to acknowledge you have a comment here that we have to read. He says, "I don't even care about winning the West anymore. It's all not real. It's fake. The West is just a national punchline at this point."
Yeah, that's pretty much how I feel. I mean, what does it even mean to win the West at this point with the offense that we have being a national punchline? Does anyone actually care that we win the West? That's the actual question. What does it benefit Iowa?
I'm sure the players care.
I'm sure they do, but at this point, it's not looking very likely with this offense.
Well, as you said in your comment, the West is not good, and Minnesota lost today. Wisconsin lost today. Nebraska lost today. So Iowa, all they have to do is win out, and they have won the West. And they may get smoked in the Big Ten championship game. That's possible. But, I mean, what else do you want them to do, Tyler? You want them just to mail it in and just forfeit the rest of the games? I mean, what do you do at this point?
I'm not saying to mail it in. I'm just saying I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think this team has the ability to, with the outdated scheme we have, the horrible QB play we have, the horrible wide receiver play we have, to think that we can beat all 3 of these teams and then just like go get smoked by Michigan again. What does that benefit us? I mean, honestly.
Well, Don, can you talk a little bit about, I understand Tyler's frustrations, but can you talk about how you would handle the situation? Obviously, this is a unique one with this offense and the situation with the offensive coordinator.
Sure. For all these years when East and West existed, and I think it's close to 10 years now, right?
Yeah.
For all these years, you had a minimum of a couple of goals on any season if you're an Iowa football player. First and foremost, because it happens chronologically in this order, first and foremost, win the West. And that entitles you to do a trip to Indianapolis with a chance to win a Big Ten title. You can't win a Big Ten title unless you earn your way to Indianapolis. So that's always been a goal to do that every year. We've only been able to do it, twice now? This is a chance for I think isn't that true? Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I think the issue a lot of fans have is just, do we think that Kirk will make the right decision and who he hires as OC to actually get players who want to come to play at Iowa? Because how I see it now, I think he's going to choose someone who is way too safe and who will continue to run his outdated scheme, and no quarterbacks or wide receivers want to play under his scheme. I mean, that's just like people talk about, how Iowa can't get recruits, and that's true, but it's also no one wants to play for an outdated scheme, and also we can't develop the recruits that we get. I mean, that's the other problem. So
that is a problem. However, I will say this, Tyler, NIL makes things possible, and it made Caleb Brown. It had a big role in getting Caleb Brown here. And no, they have not utilized him, but he is a former high 4-star receiver. And I have no doubt there are other coordinators, other coaches that could get a lot more out of the guys that are on the roster right now. And even if they go with a safe move, say it's a Paul Chryst, no one's going to be able to convince me that Paul Chryst couldn't get a lot more out of this offense than Brian Ferentz is getting out of him. He's a former quarterback. He's a former offensive coordinator. They need an offensive mind, whether he's young, whether he's a spread guy. They need an offensive mind who understands the passing game. And
yeah, I completely agree.
For the passing game and obviously the run game, given his background at Wisconsin. And I would be fine with Paul Chryst. I'm sure you would probably say that's a safe move, but I think you're right. I don't think Kirk's going to do something risky at this point.
No, I agree. I agree that we need an offensive mind, but the problem is, will Kirk let the reins go of the offense and let the offensive mind that he gets into Iowa do what they can do to fix the offense? Because as of right now, every single offensive coordinator we've had has not been very good. I mean, Brian didn't pan out in his tenure there. I mean, it just didn't work. So I just think,
Ken O'Keefe had a couple of decent years here offensively, a couple of good years. Actually, 2002 was a really good year. I know they had Brad Banks, but the offense was a lot better than it is right now. Ken O'Keefe was also a buddy of Kirk Ferentz's, right? I know Kirk owes a lot to Ken O'Keefe for helping him get started early in his career. And then Greg Davis was at the tail end of his career, and I kind of interpreted that move as a stepping stone to Brian. So we've only seen three offensive coordinators at Iowa. If we don't know this, maybe he goes with John Budmeyer because he's comfortable with him, Tyler. But if Kirk goes out and hires a guy like a Paul Chryst or somebody else who is an offensive mind, I don't necessarily think the scheme dooms them to fail. Now, I don't think the ceiling is real high with this scheme, but I do think there's enough room for movement with an offensive mind to work within the confines of Kirk's system and be successful. They don't need to be great on offense. We've said that how many times? They just need to be average, and I think it's still possible to be average with this scheme.
Yeah, I think we need to do something radical to fix it. I think we need to change the scheme entirely. I think with the new teams coming into the Big Ten and divisions going away, like how is the current thing that we're doing going to work when we're playing UCLA and we're playing all these other teams that are coming into the division?
It's not. You and I both know he's not going to do that, Tyler.
Yeah, he's not going to change it. That's what I'm saying. It's going to be the same scheme, and it's gonna hurt us in the long run. That's just what I'm saying.
Oh, I agree. I agree with that.
So,
Don, you have anything to add on that?
Oh, I think he froze.
Don, you got anything, Don? I think we lost you, Don. You're either muted or you're. I don't think Don can hear us at all. I don't know what's going on with Don. We your audio, Don. But Tyler, anything else?
No, that's about it. I just wanted to come in and state my opinions.
All right, thank you, sir. All right, Coach, can you speak? Can we hear you? See if we can get you back here. Can you speak? Don, can you speak? Don cannot see me or hear me. Okay, so Don is right now, he's in a twilight zone. So as we continue with the very strange post-game show that we've already been a part of. We had a strange live show not that long ago where everything was going wrong. I don't know what that was, but let's see if we can get him back. All right. I just sent a text over to Don. Hopefully he gets that. Brian with a super chat. Like that scene from Forgetting Sarah Marshall. I never seen that movie, by the way, Brian. But thank you. He says the scene with Kunu. Do less, no, just lay there and do nothing. Well, you got to do something. Okay. I've never seen that movie. I don't even know what that movie's about. I've heard of it before, but I really don't have any idea what that movie is. All right. Let's see. Mike with the super chat. Thank you, Mike. It screams that our portal recruiting is trash. I don't know that you can say that, Mike, given the fact that Iowa's had players like a Charlie Jones who they've nabbed in the portal, have not really produced anything offensively, and then have went somewhere else and been outstanding. So I would argue that because there have been examples that indicate that it's more of how Iowa fails to utilize those recruits. Like I said to Tyler here a second ago, they have gotten guys. There have been guys that they've landed, and they need to land more. There's no question about it. They need to recruit better. Yes, absolutely, especially at receiver. But guys like Seth Anderson, guys like Caleb Brown, those are really good ads. Those are solid ads. Those are Big Ten ads. Seth Anderson was wanted by Georgia Tech. He was wanted by Kansas, which is a good offensive team. And the point is, I think you're right about recruiting. It needs to improve, but I don't think portal recruiting is the problem. They've been able to accomplish quite a bit via NIL in the transfer portal, in spite of the OC, in spite of the offense, and you could argue, in spite of the head coach. Let's see if we got Don back. Coach, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We are back. I don't know what's going on, but we got you back, Don. Let's go back to our phone line. Thank you for calling our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Who's on the line?
Yeah, this is Ron.
Hey, Ron.
I've got a question for you and Don.
Okay.
What would you think if we had Cooper DeJean holding punts when we punt? That way we might be able to fake a punt, and would he be able to run with the ball? Would he be able to pass the ball? Would that be a possibility of picking up an extra point here or there?
So real quick, before we address the question, it's a good question. Can I get you just to turn your I can hear myself in the background. Could I get you just to turn your computer down just a little bit? I appreciate that. No, you're fine, Ron. Good question, Don. They have used Cooper in practice preseason. They've ran him as the holder. And of course, that made us all think, hey, maybe they could utilize him on some trick plays on special teams. My only response to that would be it's rare that they're going to want to fake a field goal, given how good their field goal kicker is and how important points are. But it's a fair question because they have ran him at holder in the preseason, Don.
Yeah. Is he officially our backup holder? I guess I don't know for sure who our backup holder
There's
is.
nobody listed as a backup holder on the depth chart, so we have no idea.
Yeah.
So, Don, I mean,
imagine the other quarterbacks are emergency holders. They probably practice some as a holder.
But do you think that's worth exploring at this point, or is it too late in the game?
Well, if I saw Cooper as a holder, I would expect a fake.
Right.
So I would probably call off any kind of rush just because I'd be playing for the possibility of a fake that involves number 3.
Right. Yeah, I think it was an intriguing idea preseason, Ron, but at this point in the season, either you run him week 1 out there as the holder or you don't run him at all. Because you've kind of tipped your cap to the opposing team that, hey, we're doing something different. It might include a fake.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. And I've got I'm thinking I'd like to have Paul Crisp as the offensive coordinator.
Okay.
But then I'd also like to throw a wrench in the monkey works and have Drew Tate as quarterback coach.
Okay. Yeah. You're not the only one who feels that way. And I know Drew Tate sounds like he's coaching up in Canada right now. Maybe he's a really good quarterbacks coach. I don't know. I know he's got some experience coaching quarterbacks in the FCS and then up at, I think he coached quarterbacks or coached tight ends up at UNI, but he's getting experience under his belt. I don't know if he would mesh well with Kirk. I know he was sometimes, maybe they weren't always on the same page as a player and a coach. They're kind of different personalities, but you're not the only one that feels that way. I think he obviously, as a former player, understands the position.
And then that way, whenever Kirk retires, Paul Crisp would slide in, and then maybe Drew Tate would have enough experience to do offensive coordinator.
No, that's certainly an idea. I don't know that the fans would love the idea of Paul Crisp as the next head coach, but he is an experienced guy who's won games.
Yep. Okay. Well, thanks, guys.
Thank you,
Have
sir.
a good day.
Appreciate it, Ron.
All
right. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson. Who's on the line?
Hello,
you're on the air.
Oh, hey, got a quick question for you. This is Randy Hansen from Tyler.
Hey, Randy.
I got this. This is for Coach Patterson. I'm just going back. It doesn't really have anything to do with today's games, but there's been so many great Iowa moments. Back 85 game against Michigan, where you kicked that field goal with 2 seconds. I just wondered, from a coach's perspective, you being on the staff and all that, is there any particular game or moment that sticks out to you as a coach? Maybe from your perspective, it was extremely special moment, because we look at it from a different point of view as a fan. I just wondered if there's any moments that just stand out for you that were great moments, as you being a coach.
Oh, sure. There are several that come to mind. 1985, 1 versus 2. That was a neat game because you might recall there was an extra drama because Scott Helverson appeared to catch a pass in the back of the end zone. He was ruled to be out of the back of the end zone. The replay showed he was clearly in. The officials blew the call. Instead of getting 6 points to be followed by a PAT, we only ended up with 3 points on that possession. And as you know, at the end of the game, we were behind 10-9. So that added to the drama because we needed that last second field goal to win. And of course, Rob delivered. And the thing that sticks in my mind, Mike Flagg, our tight end at that time, a very reliable tight end, had a couple of key catches on that last drive to keep the drive alive. And of course, we needed all those first downs. Michigan had a great defense that year. But we had a good offense too, of course, and yet Michigan kept us out of the end zone all day long. It was a great effort on their part, and we managed to get into field goal range 4 times and maybe 5 times. Come to think of it, I believe Rob did miss one, as I recall. Does that sound right? Not sure.
I think he was 3 for 4 that day, or 4 for 5. Or
he was definitely 4 for 5. We had 12 points, right? 4 field goals to win. So I'm pretty sure he missed one. I think he missed one on the previous attempt even. But this one was a little bit closer. We had a lot of confidence in Rob, and he delivered. So that game comes to mind. Another game, talking about Michigan, you remember this one, Corey, and let me get my year straight. I believe it's 1991, I believe. 90 or 91. Not sure which. But I do remember vividly that Matt Rogers was the quarterback, and that was a really, really good Michigan team as well. And we had to go 85 yards to score the winning touchdown. That's what we did. The amazing thing is, I was talking to Matt Rogers. I reminded Matt, let's not forget, Matt, 3rd down is no longer critical. And Corey, you've heard me talk about that. You got 4 downs. Don't panic on 3rd. If it's 3rd and 12, so what? Get half the 12 yards on 3rd down and then convert on 4th down. You got the extra down. Don't panic. Matt's response that day when I reminded him of that is, Coach, we're not even going to need 3rd down. I remember thinking to myself, son, we're playing Michigan. I'm pretty sure we might need all 4 of them. But here's the truth. 9 plays, 85 yards, all 9 of them, 1st and 2nd down. To this day, that still gives me chills to think about that. Matt Rogers actually called that. And the odds of that happening were slim, but it happened. We got it done. And then our only concern was we're scoring too quickly. We scored with about a minute left. Then we turned it over to the defense, and the defense promptly intercepted Michigan's 3rd down pass. They still had 4th down, but they panicked on 3rd down and threw it up for grab, maybe on 2nd down even. They threw it up on an early down and got it intercepted by John Derby. You remember the linebacker, John Derby?
Sure, AJ's dad.
Yeah, who I also had the privilege of recruiting to come to Iowa from Oconomowoc, Wisconsin. So that's another neat win. To come from behind in the big house is hard to do, but we did it. Other games come to mind. How could I forget Marv Cook at the end of the Ohio State game? Because that was an amazing play, and I was coaching tight ends at the time. And after the game, I told Marv, I said, Marv, I've coached tight ends for a long time. That is the greatest game a tight end has ever played for me at Iowa. And he looked at me and he said, Coach, you're going to be really disappointed, though, on 3 plays. I blew it on 3 plays. Well, that was 3 plays out of 75, so that's pretty good. That's why he was a consensus All-American and ended up being a 2-time Pro Bowl tight end. So that went to mind. That was a good win. There's so many. Here's a good one, a last-second win at Wisconsin. What was so neat about it is Mike Saunders caught the winning touchdown. 59-yard flat was the play. Caught it, and how meaningful for a guy from Milton, Wisconsin. He had the courage to go out of state to school because he felt at the time Iowa was a better place for him. And then he turned around and scored the winning touchdown against the Badgers in Madison, which is no more than maybe an hour drive from Mike's home. So that's pretty neat. Things like that come to mind. That's 4 games right there. There are others I could think of, but we'll let it go at that. That's a good place to stop.
And then just one last comment. I know the Drew Tate and probably Kirk Prince weren't best of buddies, or it just didn't seem like they had a close relationship. But I also think Drew Tate was probably my favorite quarterback of all time. But I don't know how mature he was as a person at that point. Like that one comment that he had when the Ohio State players were, they mentioned who's the team or who's the player they hated the worst for in the Big Ten, and it was immediate Drew Tate, and they were, because I guess he was doing that air guitar running down the field every time he passed, and when they said it to Drew Tate, well, they didn't want me playing the air guitar. They shouldn't have let me keep completing all those passes. And that was just kind of his cocky attitude and all that. I think he's matured a lot. If you ever watch him on any of his interviews lately, I think he's outgrown a lot of that. I'd love to see him somehow get back into the Iowa Hawkeye program. So, yeah. But anyways, I was just kind of curious what some of the coaches' favorite games were, because there's just been a lot of them, of course.
Absolutely.
But anyways, great show. Appreciate the call, or taking the call.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate the call. Yeah, good question. And I know Drew Tate's a real popular name out there right now. I don't know that he's qualified to be an offensive coordinator, but certainly maybe down the line, I know Iowa fans would like to see him back coaching quarterbacks. I just don't know whether Kirk would be okay with that, given Drew's personality. He's just a different type of cat, obviously very successful at Iowa as a quarterback. Grain, I think I'm pronouncing, I hope I'm not butchering that name. I apologize, Mr. Well, is it Baker or Bacher or Backer? I'm sorry to our super chat user here. Thank you for this super chat, sir. You have to practice being bad to be this bad on offense. Imagine if we practice being efficient on offense or even explosive. What's the upside? I always love, listen right here. However you pronounce the first name, Grainy, if we're talking about Nico's family. I always love when any comment ends with that comment, that question, what's the upside? It makes the comment that much better. Scott, appreciate the super chat from Scott. Ohio State didn't look dominant today. Give us a shot. Well, we'll see how Iowa looks next week against Rutgers. Scott, another super chat. The Illinois quarterback looked good, basically stole the game. I did not see that, but I'll be anxious to see how that game was lost by Minnesota. It sounds like it was in dramatic and fitting fashion, given what happened with the Iowa-Minnesota game 2 weeks ago. Don, did you caught the end of the Illinois-Minnesota game?
Yes, I did. I was the one that alerted you, right?
You were. I had somebody else text me. I had our friend Kyle text me and say, "Hey, fitting end to the Minnesota-Illinois game." And I have nothing against PJ Fleck personally, but just the way that game ended 2 weeks ago, it kind of feels good. And, of course, it helps Iowa in the race for the West right now. They needed Minnesota to lose. Yep.
Our fate is back in our own hands.
Thank you, Scott, for the super chat. John, appreciate the super chat donation, John. And he adds with another super chat. Look at John. Appreciate John. Shout out to Beth Getz for stepping up and firing Brian. Deacon Hill is not a Division I quarterback. I've never seen an offense this bad. Cooper finally in on offense. I'm sitting row 3 next week versus Rutgers, praying for offense. Go Hawks. Well, I appreciate I know the Hawkeyes appreciate your support, John, even though you feel very strongly about the offense. I think a lot of us do, and do appreciate you supporting the show with your donation and your comment, John. Let's go back to our phone line. We have, let's see who is next in our queue. We've got Hayden on the line. Hayden, welcome.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right. Go Hawks. I mean, we won in a classic Iowa way, but I just was thinking, with Kirk Ferentz's philosophy of don't turn the ball over, after Deacon cost us at least 6 points, and last week with his number of turnovers, I mean, there had to be some thought of or at least I had the thought, we've got to see Labus or Linez come in, but it didn't happen, of course. I mean, what can you expect? But I do have a question.
Great question. If you just address that real quick, because it's a good comment. We've been hearing that, Don, that really criteria number one for the Iowa quarterbacks, and it's sort of sad, but it sort of makes sense at the same time. It's protecting the football. And there
Right.
are metrics out there that indicate that Deacon Hill may be the worst in all of the FBS, the worst starting quarterback in all of the FBS at protecting the football. Now, I don't have the data to back that up, but that's been out there. We've seen that certainly against Wisconsin. There were some turnovers that literally were just dropped by the Badgers on some errant passes. We've seen 3 turnovers from Deacon Hill against Minnesota last week, one of which came on a drive that could have gotten them in field goal range for Drew Stevens, who probably could have made a 60-yarder in Kinnick for the win. And then, of course, today has another strip fumble. Iowa thankfully got it back. Throws the pick in the end zone toward Nico Ragaini. Alex brought that up earlier. He is not protecting the football very well right now, Don, and he's not being asked to do much. So Hayden brings up a fair point. Why not go to somebody else?
Well, what's the upside, right?
What's the upside? Don, tell us.
Yeah, let me find my comment here. Naked by Hill. This was late in the third quarter, I believe. Naked by Hill, pulled up, tries to use throwaway. Poor decision, should be intercepted. You remember the play I'm talking about?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
Well, that was a dying quill if there ever was one.
Oh,
And that
my
ball
goodness.
was just fluttering out in space, and frankly, the guy should be benched for not controlling the ball because it was thrown basically right to him. He was nice enough to put it on the ground.
Right. It was one of the worst decisions I've seen from an Iowa quarterback. And I don't mean to be mean to Deacon. That was one of the worst decisions I've seen, and that's even including some bad Spencer Petras decisions.
That ball would have probably gone to the house. We'll have to go back and look at it for me to verify that, but it would have gone a significant distance, I think, down the field. Because there simply weren't any other people out there. 2 things come to mind. One is don't wear out the naked. How many times can we get by with throwing the naked? We clearly ran it one too many times at that point. Now, maybe we came back to it later. I can't remember if the touchdown came a little bit later or not. I think we had already scored, I believe. Pretty sure we'd already scored. Anybody remember for sure?
Yeah, because we scored
I think
pretty
we were
early in the
nothing at
third
the time.
quarter, so
Yeah.
I believe that came after that. But yeah, it's getting ridiculous at this point. I mean,
And
you
there
just-
was another play where he was in the grasp, if you will, and tried to throw the ball away again, and same thing. It fluttered out in space. Thankfully, nobody got their hands on it, but it was when the ball went up, my heart was in my throat because I'm thinking, this is the kind of ball that gets intercepted.
So I'm just
So
curious, Don.
There were 2 of them in the game, if I'm not mistaken. Do you remember a second one too, Corey?
No, I don't. But the one was just as bad as I've seen. And I tweeted out, I don't normally do this. And I promise I was not trying to feed into the fan frenzy that is the backup quarterback. But I tweeted out in all caps after that play. Let me find the tweet. And again, I don't ever tweet like this. But the tweet was, very simply put, make a quarterback change right now. Right now.
I thought it was going to be a 3-word tweet. Get him out. Get him out.
I'm sitting here like Hayden thinking, what's the upside, right? What is the upside right now at keeping Deacon Hill? And I have nothing against him. He seemed like a nice young kid. He's engaged.
He's out there doing his best. He's out there doing his best. But
absolutely.
It's his best is not enough.
Without his best judgment, though, sometimes.
But Don,
unless you can get it off the field, then you don't throw it.
If you
it's
think
not
about
throwaway until you can throw it off the field.
I can't imagine he's got too much flexibility and independence to make changes up at the line of scrimmage. So he's running the plays that are given him. Obviously, the playbook doesn't seem too big in general, right? You talked about how many times they run naked. So if he's not protecting the football when he drops back in the pocket, he's liable to fumble. He's liable to make bad decisions when he's under pressure. He's not accurate typically in the pocket when he's got time. What would putting a guy like Linez in the game at this point? How could that possibly be worse? Would he just be dropping? Would he not be able to catch a snap? Is that how bad the quarterback position has become? I mean, at some point, logic would tell you, hey, you try something else and maybe something else works. I know that sounds juvenile in thinking, but Deacon Hill does not look to be the answer right now. And we understand the coaches are looking at these guys in practice each and every week. But man, If he's not protecting the football, I don't know what he's giving you.
Yeah, and another play that comes to mind to me is I want to say it was in the third quarter, but it might have been in the second quarter. We ran a rollout, a bootleg, and his lack of athleticism. I mean, he got chased down by that linebacker, by that end or linebacker, and it might have been the play where he threw it, to the. I think it was, yeah, when he threw it just to get rid of it, almost got intercepted. I mean,
It was the same play. Yeah.
yeah. So I mean, I know I can say with almost full confidence that Labus or Linez probably are much better athletes than Deacon Hill, and I think that athleticism would also really help our offense. A guy that could extend plays or get out of the pocket at least. But
yeah. Anything else, Hayden?
Yeah, I did have a question, and it's not related to the game, but so with the situation with Brian, as far as recruiting goes, with the early recruiting and the transfer portal, when you have when you're going out recruiting these players and you don't know who your offensive coordinator or these offense players, if they don't know who they're going to be playing for, I mean, is that going to be just as detrimental as trying to recruit them with Brian Ferentz and then like not knowing who their offense coordinator is going to be?
No, because what they're going to hear is reassurance from Coach Ferentz. I'm going to get a great offensive coordinator because that's the only piece of the puzzle that's missing.
Yeah.
And it'll be intriguing to a lot of coordinators to be able to come in here and shore up the offense and give us a chance to win championships every year.
Well, and the other thing is, too, I'll say this, Hayden, I think a lot of players, yeah, they may come in to play for their position coach. I don't think there are any quarterbacks coming because they want to be taught the quarterback position by Brian Ferentz. With all due respect to Brian Ferentz, he's the OC, but they may come to play for Liddell Betts. They may come to play for come to play for Kelton Copeland or George Barnett, or maybe they're just coming because they love Kirk Ferentz's culture. I agree with Don. I think the move creates more stability as it relates to recruiting in advance of the early signing period and the transfer portal window, which will open next month. And regardless of who they get in, I still stand by the move by Beth Getz to make the move when she did. The argument could be made, why is he finishing out the year? We had that discussion earlier in the week, but I agree with Don. I don't think there's a ton of, I don't think that's going to hurt them as much as it could have hurt them to continue into the offseason with no change at OC.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I don't have a problem with the timing. I mean, you'd think they do it earlier in the bye week, maybe the Monday directly after the Minnesota game.
Sure.
And then you start interviewing candidates. I don't know, but Kirk probably doesn't have time of the day for that at this point in the season. But
yeah.
Well, the guys we hire are guys that are very involved with their teams right now. So there's saying nobody in the interview right.
Sure.
And just for the record, we keep bringing up Paul Christ. He is on the Texas staff right now as an analyst. So most of these guys, I mean, pretty much all these guys, like you said, Don, they're all working somewhere. Right. So the hire's not going to happen until, I would say, at least January. Is that fair, Don? At least January? We're not going to hear anything until after bowl season.
Maybe December is possible.
Yeah, because I mean, I feel like it's pretty common now. Coaches are deciding where they're going to be next before they play their bowl game, so it'll be interesting to see. So
possible. Doesn't really fit into what.
Yeah, it doesn't fit us, but
yeah, exactly. Yep.
I guess we'll see. Anyways, that's all I got. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Hayden.
I think oftentimes the next hire is still going to be committed to coaching one more game where he is. The guy that comes to mind that everyone's talking about is the OC at Washington. Is it hard to imagine Washington is not going to be involved with a really big bowl game or maybe be in the Final Four? So he may not be available for a while, but I still think, based on what I know, I think we'd be kind of crazy not to go after him. And I know, Corey, you mentioned the other day, isn't he in line for a head coaching position? And I would suggest the argument for coming here is he has a chance to replace Kirk as the next coach at Iowa. And if you're from Iowa, I think that might matter to you.
I think that's a very far-fetched name, but I absolutely agree with you. It's worth a phone call, maybe multiple phone calls. Absolutely. Before we get to, we've got Tom Kakert here waiting on hold. We're recapping Iowa's 10-7 victory in Wrigley Field in Chicago. I want to give a shout out to RTI Threads. Visit CD3lacesup.com to shop the official apparel and merch of Iowa cornerback. And what do we call him? A receiver now as well, Don? He's running some. He got a carry today. How about that? Was it an 8-yard? I don't have the official box score up yet, but an 8-yard carry for Cooper.
Yeah, and that's someone referred to it as a reverse. It's not really a reverse. We simply sent him into the backfield and handed him the ball. And
Right.
even then he gained 8 yards.
What a great player. What a great spin move on the punt return, too. It's amazing. I have not seen, even Charlie Jones didn't pull that kind of stuff off. It's incredible what Cooper's doing right now on special teams, on defense, on offense, and bouncing back from what had to have been a debilitating emotional loss 2 weeks ago. But definitely shop the Cooper DeJean apparel at cd3lacesup.com. And, of course, rtithreads.com. You can shop all of their official athletes, Zach Lutmer, Carson Shire, Aiden Hall. Aaron Graves is now part of the mix. We interviewed Aaron about a week ago on the show. Again, cd3lacesup.com and RTI Threads. We appreciate them sponsoring the show. And before we get back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line, let's bring in Tom Kakert of HawkeyeReport.com. And on 3, Tom.
Gentlemen, how are
Hey,
you?
Tom,
Coach, how are you? Corey,
I'm doing. How about yourself?
good. Yeah,
So
just
you
sitting
are-
here in the press box at Wrigley Field, so it's pretty wild.
So how does a baseball press box differ from a football press box, Tom? Tell us.
It's a little narrower, and the views are a little harder because you're only getting the end zone, and it was weird because both teams are on the same sideline, and yeah, I stopped and saw the divot on the way up from the press box too, so I got to see that. Took a picture of it, put it out on Twitter.
Thankfully, you didn't
Oh.
fall into it because we'd have to.
I know,
spend some
I know.
getting
Coach, I didn't need to be in the divot.
Brian in the
But,
chat brings this up. He says that was where the dugout was. They had to build it up with dirt and sand and grass. I'm assuming Kirk Ferentz was asked about that hole. Had he ever seen anything like that in a game?
No, he hadn't. I got the sense from Kirk's comments that he wasn't really thrilled to be here for this game and play in this venue. He was talking about guys running 9 routes into the outfield wall. So, Coach, you can probably appreciate that. You probably wouldn't want to run a 9 route into a brick wall.
I do wonder, Tom, do you have any idea whose original idea was it to play in Wrigley? Was it ours or Northwestern?
No, it was Northwestern, and Kirk said they did not get a say in that. So that was his frustration, I think.
Did not. I thought as a courtesy
Yeah.
they would ask for Iowa's blessing too. But I guess they
Yeah,
don't
it
have to.
didn't seem like it was a two-way street. It was more like a one-way.
Gotcha.
But I think they're done playing in Wrigley now. I think it was like a 3-game deal or something. So we'll
I am
see.
curious, if we outnumber their fans, I presume we did.
Oh yeah, it was about 80-20 Iowa fans. And it was loud with Iowa fans today.
Well, they lost a little bit of their home field advantage when they moved down the street, didn't they?
Yes, they did. Yep.
So, Tom, can you talk a little bit about what Kirk's tenor was? Of course, this is the second time you guys got to see Kirk in person following the news earlier in the week. But, of course, a typical Iowa win and on a day where the offense struggled. What was the overall feeling from the head man?
Yeah, I think it was, it's been a challenging week and challenging game. And, his message was it took all 3 phases to kind of get the job done. And they're obviously leaning on defense and special teams more than they are the offense right now. That goes without saying. And they're just kind of trying to grind it out, find ways to win. And here we are. They're 7-2 and 1 game up on everybody else in the Big Ten West and back in control of their own destiny. 3 more wins and they are headed to Indianapolis. And in some ways, maybe even just 2 more wins. And they, depending on how the cookie crumbles, they'll be back to Indianapolis. So, yeah, it's a strange game, but it's not pretty. Nobody's going to say it's pretty, but the goal of every Saturday is to go out and get a win. And he found a way to do another one. I don't know how they do it, but they do.
And we've come to expect it week after week, Tom. But
Yeah.
I'm just curious. I don't have these scenarios in front of me. I know you and people like Scott Docterman probably have these in your back pocket. But as far as tiebreak scenarios, Iowa, of course, has a head-to-head against Wisconsin. Minnesota has a head-to-head against Iowa. Assuming Iowa wins 2 of their last 3 games, Minnesota loses to Ohio State. And Wisconsin, where they would actually be tied if they win out. We would have a 3-way tie potentially, is what I'm getting at. I'm assuming the tiebreaker, without looking back at the tiebreak rules, would be record against one another. Who would have that record as of right now? Of course, we haven't seen Wisconsin, Minnesota play. That might determine things the final week of the year.
Yeah, I'm not sure. That might play a role in it at the end of the day, but I still think they're probably in the post position right now in the conference race. The Nebraska Iowa game might decide it too. Nebraska is still kind of lurking about, but boy, they had a chance to really kind of take control of their destiny today, and they did not take care of business up at East Lansing.
Don, I'm curious to get your take as Tom brought up the way Iowa wins football games. You've got 3 teams here coming up: Rutgers, Illinois, Nebraska. And we both agree all these games are going to be close. Which one of those teams is most dangerous in your opinion? After watching all of them, they've all won games that maybe or competed better, like Rutgers competed against Ohio State today. Which one of those teams is most dangerous to Iowa?
My way of thinking, it would be Rutgers. And I'll tell you why. You heard me say before, Rutgers typically does not beat themselves. You have to go out and beat them.
Yeah.
Yep, they did today, though. They gave up that interception to Ohio State, and that really hurt them.
Let's talk about that play. That could have very easily been a foul on Ohio State.
Yep.
Couldn't that have been ruled targeting? I think it could have very easily been ruled targeting, but it wasn't.
Yep.
But if you go back and look at it, if you're a Rutgers fan, I promise you see targeting.
Yep.
So I'm curious, Tom. I'm guessing, first of all, we should address Bo Stevens. He was carted off during this game. Looked like a bad knee injury. Was there any update provided by Kirk?
I asked Kirk about the offensive linemen that are dinged up. Logan Jones was in a walking boot. Obviously, the Bo Stevens thing looked way more serious. His knee buckled. He had knee issues early in the year, and they thought he had kind of blown out his knee earlier in the year, but thankfully he didn't. But that may have happened today. We'll see. And Mason Richmond, I don't know how healthy he is. I mean, it just seemed like he's been battling that bone bruise for a bit, and he's got a little bit of a hitch in his giddy up. So, and they brought Nick DeJean in for him, but they're running on empty at that offensive line position. Rusty Feth, we saw him. He had his right arm in a sling, or left arm, I think, was in a sling when he was leaving us, walking out of the locker room area. So that's another guy who's been playing, I think, pretty well and giving him a little juice on the offensive line. And don't know how serious that is, but when you see a guy in a sling, you take notice, right?
Yeah, and obviously the Logan Jones, who took the majority. I mean, I didn't even notice, frankly, as a
Ellsbury took all the snaps.
Tyler Ellsbury taking all the snaps, so he is the back center right now.
Yeah, and I asked Deacon about that, and he had worked with Ellsbury a lot because Ellsbury's been kind of the second string center. So when Deke was second string, a lot of the time he was taking snaps from him.
I'm assuming Cooper DeJean getting his 2 offensive snaps also got brought up. What was the talk about with Cooper?
Yeah, just they tried to tap into that a little bit, and I think everybody kind of got enthused about Coop playing on the offensive side. I was hoping for a little wildcat, but maybe they'll open that up this next week and just kind of snap the ball to him. I think that's even more interesting moving forward. I'm curious coach's view on that because Don, I think you probably got more of a feel for that as an offensive coordinator than I do. But I just think getting the ball directly to him, and we know the fact that he could throw the ball. He was a quarterback in high school and a good one. So, just your thoughts.
I would be, if I were the DB coach or the defensive coordinator, I'd be a little more nervous if he was going to have the ball in his possession and be near a lot of tacklers. In other words, be running him up somewhere between the tackles. That would make me a little more nervous just because there's more tacklers nearby. If it's some kind of perimeter play, at least he's in the open field, and in that regard, it resembles a punt return. You know, he's not likely to get hung up in a lot of traffic.
Well, let's not forget, Don, I haven't brought this up to Tom before, but I didn't like the little, I know it was kind of a joke and kind of funny to a lot of people. They ran Sam Laporta up the middle on a Wildcat play after Sam was fresh off a leg injury and a few months away from the NFL draft. So if you can run Sam Laporta in that situation, perhaps maybe Cooper could take a few snaps. But anyways, I agree with you, Tom. I'd love to see some Wildcat snaps out of Coop.
You know, one of the other things to note was that
Gary, you got Dolph in the background.
I got Gary Dolphin. I got Gary Dolphin, kind of jumping in the feed. My friend Gary. Yes, he's we got famous people wandering behind me. So, gosh, what was I going to say? Caleb Brown making a play finally. They finally got the ball to him, and that was really one of the biggest plays of the game.
I will admit, Tom, I found myself wondering who in the world is 81.
I know we had people thinking it was Vanderbush, who's
It all made sense because number 3 had to be reserved for the defensive guy. Couldn't have him out there.
That's one of those things where fans don't realize that you got to change. You can't have 2 3s out there at the same time, so they had to change him to 81 today.
Are you surprised at all, Tom, reflecting on the preseason, that when Caleb Brown was brought in, he didn't just take a different number?
Not really. I think that was his number that he wanted to have. So
I understand it's his number that he wants to have, but if there's any thought to potentially playing Cooper DeJean,
I don't think there was any thought of Cooper playing offense this year. Okay. I don't think anybody was thinking about that.
Anything else, Tom, that we missed from I'm sure what was an interesting press conference with Kirk? There was a moment I saw pregame. They showed it on Peacock, a moment shared between Kirk and Brian. I don't know if that was brought up during the press conference, but I'm sure this was every win's going to be an emotional win for Kirk from here on out.
Yeah, nothing really profound from that. I'll say this: Brian was the first assistant coach out of the building or out of the locker room today. He was headed to the exit, so this is how it's going to be the rest of the way, guys. This season
You're saying
going to be.
That's not typical post game. Usually nearly that quickly.
Yeah, he was out of here quick. So, before we even really got into the media room, Brian was out the door. So he just, I think he was just ready to be done today. It was just a different game. It was cool being here, but boy, being on the same sidelines, that was weird. Made subs harder, made getting timeouts harder if you're down on one end. At that one time at the end of the half where Iowa was trying to call timeouts and they couldn't get the ref's attention, and 20 seconds ran off the clock, and they were madder than a wet hornet down there on that end because you just can't reach the officials because you're on one side. And Kirk made kind of a comment about how maybe they did that for revenue purposes, which is basically selling some extra tickets down low because people get blocked out because of the way the baseball field is configured. So.
By the way,
one of the things I know what I was going to tell you guys that pregame. I don't know if you guys noticed it, but you guys probably wouldn't have because you weren't here. But Marco Lainez was running second team.
I did hear that. Saw it tweeted out by Chad Leistico, and I'm guessing. I mean, Joe Labus was on the sidelines wearing a green hat. He was not on the injury report. Is that an indication that Lainez has passed him up?
I think so. Yeah, I think they probably put him up.
The depth chart still earlier in the week. The depth chart was as it always was, but but Saturday proved to be different. Game day was different.
And I,
So Marco was taking
and I bet,
snooze.
yeah, and I bet it will say Labus second string on Monday too. That's my guess, but
Why?
that's just I don't know. It's just how they'll do it.
Okay.
They'll do it that way until they don't have to do it. It's probably why. And you know, I got a lot of questions about Caleb Johnson today too, and don't know what the deal was today. He was in uniform. He was over on riding the exercise bike a lot, so you know, he didn't play. So I don't know if he was just not feeling well or what, but may have been a little bug going through the team, maybe. So we'll see.
That's what somebody said earlier in the chat. Have you heard some substance to that?
Yeah, I heard something. Yeah, I did.
Okay.
So
Well, this is the
Tom,
time of
I'm
year. Go ahead, Don.
I'm curious,
Go ahead,
Tom,
Coach.
question about the so-called throwaway that didn't nearly make it off the field.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
We were so
Deke
lucky
got
on
asked about
play.
that. Deacon got asked about that pass that he
What-
just almost threw to a Northwestern guy. And he said in retrospect, he just needs to put it at Caleb's or at LaShawn's feet, you know, just throw it at his feet and don't try and make a play. Just live to fight another day. It was a bad decision.
Yeah, we were really fortunate that ball was.
Yeah, because that was a turnover waiting to happen.
And it
Yeah.
seems like if Caleb Brown was in a doghouse, perhaps he's worked his way out of that doghouse, Tom, because he was seen more on the field today than we've seen him in the last month.
Yeah, he's worked his way out of whatever that doghouse is, and you know, Jacob Bostic was getting some snaps too, so that's good to see that he's getting an opportunity to he's healthy, because that's another guy that's not been healthy at all. So we'll see.
Tom Caker to HawkeyeReport.com. Be sure to head over there for football. And now we have basketball back with men's and women's hoops, and he's got a team working hard around the clock over at HawkeyeReport.com. Tom, safe travels back on I-80, and we'll talk to you when you get back.
Yep, we'll talk to you guys soon. Thanks, Coach. Thanks, Corey.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Tom.
All right, lots to get to. Before we get to anything else, I want to be sure we acknowledge our RTI Threads player of the game, and I'll see if you agree with me on this, Don. Jay Higgins has been so important to this team this year. 12 tackles tonight, 2 tackles for loss, including a sack. Man, big shoes to fill when you talk about the career of Jack Campbell. And, of course, Seth Benson, Nick Jackson has really helped the cause. We even saw Jaden Harrell get some snaps. Of course, Kyler Fisher has been a part of the linebacking crew as well. But just talk about this group. We mentioned him earlier, but how important is Jay Higgins in this group right now?
You know, it seems like Jay, I'm sure he takes a few false steps here and there, but not many. You know, he just has a good way of diagnosing the plays and being in the right spot. And you've heard me say before, Corey, it's one thing to look like a linebacker. It's another one to be able to consistently take the right path to get to the ball carrier. The good linebackers can do that. The bad ones have difficulty finding the ball or following the ball, but the good ones do not. And he's certainly a good one. He's got an excellent eye for the ball, and invariably takes a good path to get to it. If he needs to give ground to make a tackle downfield, he does that. But so often he's moving downhill when he makes that tackle. And oftentimes it's behind the line of scrimmage or near the line of scrimmage.
So again, Jay Higgins with 12 tackles, 2 tackles for loss and a sack, our RTI Threads player of the game. Let's get back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson. Who's on the line?
Hey, this is Matt. How are you guys?
Hey, Matt, we're good.
Good. Sorry, can you hear me? I'm driving here.
I can hear you. Yep, I can tell you're driving.
Okay. All right. Sorry. So I'm a college basketball coach, so I'm very analytical. I look at numbers all the time, and I think Don is too as well as a coach. So this might be up his alley. I'm going to throw some numbers at you guys, and just want to get your opinion, and then I got a question at the end here. But
okay.
I look at Brian Ferentz's career as the offensive coordinator in 2 different tenures. Okay. So the first 53 games from the start of his career as OC up to the Penn State victory in 2021, when they won it 23-20, it was number 3 versus number 4. In that time frame, Iowa was let me get my numbers right here. They were 39-14 in those first 53 games. So out of 53 games, stay with me here. Out of 53 games, 41 of them, they were 300 yards or more. So in those games, they had a winning record, as I said, of 39-14. In the games they were, in all those games, in the games that they were over 300 yards, they were 34-7. So that's the first segment of his career that we're looking at, the 53 games there. So are you still with me here on this?
Yep.
Get all that? Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Then the second part of his career is after that Penn State game. The last 29 games. Overall, they're 19-11. So they're only lost 3 less games than what they did in the first 53, but 19-11. They've only eclipsed 300 yards or more 5 times. They're 5-0 in those games. So in Brian's career as offensive coordinator, they're 39-7 overall when they're over 300 yards. In the games that they're under 300 yards, Iowa is 19-18, counting today's victory. That finally got him over 500. So, Don, my question to you is 300 yards too much to ask out of not this Iowa offense and not what we saw last year, but out of a college football, a Division I Power 5 college football team? Is 300 yards too much to ask?
Absolutely not.
Okay. So, with that, Iowa gets
Let me
on
mention
average
this about
3
the
possessions a
numbers.
quarter. That's 25 yards of possession. That's two and a half first downs, basically.
Go ahead, Don. Did you want to add something in there?
Yeah. Here's a question I do have.
Nope.
Change to hear me? Back?
Yep, I got you back,
Corey,
Don.
are
Go
you
ahead.
with me?
Yep, go ahead.
Okay. The obvious question may change between those first 53 games and the ones that followed. Here's one thing I'm pretty sure that did exist. Correct me if I'm wrong, but a guy named quarterbacks doing all those early games.
Say
Isn't
that
that
again,
true?
Don. You cut out there for a second. What'd you say?
I'm curious. A guy named Kenny O'Keefe was coaching quarterbacks most, if not maybe almost all of those 53 games.
Sure, but Kenny O'Keefe was also coaching quarterbacks all of the 2021 season, and they were really bad. And our caller brought up a game against Penn State that took place really early against in Kinnick Stadium, and the data from 2021 says that the passing game was abysmal and quarterback play was abysmal in 2021 as well. In fact, it was bad in 2020, but they ran the ball effectively.
So to get the timeline straight, Brian's only been the quarterback coach the last 2 years. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Gotcha. Well, the only thing that came to mind for me way back in time when Brian first became the coordinator was Kenny O'Keefe was very involved with the offense. Matter of fact, I would suspect that Kenny O'Keefe was maybe didn't have the title, but he was still coordinating the passing game more so than Brian was at that time. That's what I suspect. I don't know that. I just suspect that to be true.
Which that leads me into my next question. What's changed since that Penn State game? And that makes sense that Ken O'Keefe was maybe the passing coordinator, at that time. And I mean, it's been racking my brain for about a week now because I've been looking these stats up. And I went through every one of his games. And I'm just like, what in the world changed after that Penn State game? And then from there, the offense just been, abysmal from there. I mean, up until that Penn State game, it wasn't bad. But after that game, it's been bad. Real bad.
I know it's, you can look at it both ways, but I think of 2020, and that was such an odd year. And you can't take that away from Brian or the offensive coaches in general. But the passing game was not good, but they ran so well in 2020, which is not typical. That's very atypical of an Iowa offense in the past decade. And you can't attribute that all to Iowa's opponents, but that was such a weird year with COVID. And it was an outlier when you look at the grand scheme of things. Even going back to the Nate Stanley era when they had a decent passing game, the run game was not very effective during that time period. So I don't know. I don't throw out 2020, but I also look at this is year 4 where the pass offense has been a joke. And it has not been good since Nate Stanley. The other part of this, you brought up Ken O'Keefe, Don, but can we also add in that Nate Stanley got a year of development under Greg Davis in 2016. All right. Yep. And he would have obviously had the influence of Ken O'Keefe beyond 2016. So I'm not putting it all on the quarterback coach, but I do think those are factors at play.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I agree, and that's kind of what I was trying to figure out too. Is it coaching that they're getting or not getting, or is it the development? I mean, it's obviously not one thing. It's a number of things, but yeah, it's been racking my brain for about a week now to try to figure it out, try to get a semblance of madness that it's become. So.
I think one aspect of it,
as I say, it's been racking my brain for more than a week. Go ahead, Don.
Well,
one aspect that contributes to it, I think you'd have to admit, well, first off, 2020 that's an outlier the way I see it. Correct me if I'm wrong. Those 8 games we played that year, tell me the biggest win we had that year. We benefited from a.
Yeah. Well, they won at Minnesota, at Penn State, at Minnesota, Penn State, Wisconsin. They got Wisconsin at home. All those teams were, I think, below 500 or very close.
Yeah, there were a lot of teams that were hard hit by COVID, and it wasn't a representative schedule. Some teams played 6, some played 9. So that year to me is hardly worth discussing in any kind of serious conversation. But one thing that has changed, I think, let's face it, as our defense has gotten better, and you have to argue that maybe the best defenses we've had in all those years would be those from the last 2 years. As the defense has gotten progressively better, it's given us the luxury of being even more cautious on offense to still generate a win. So that's probably a little bit of it right there. Is we've got a lead, we're protecting the lead, we're not too concerned with how many yards we gain.
Last thing I'll add, Corey, since I was on hold for, I missed a lot of the show because I'm calling on my phone. I was listening as I was driving for the most part until I got on hold. But your elevator music you got on hold is top notch. I liked it for the time I was on hold. So once again, great show. Keep it up. Hey, the Hawks are 7-2, whether we like it, the offense or not. They still get it done, and yeah, it's frustrating, but I mean, we could be 2-7 with this offense very easily. So I guess we'll take it and go on to next week with Rutgers.
Absolutely, sir. Thank you for the call, and drive safe.
Thank you. Yep.
I didn't know there was elevator music, Don. I didn't even know the elevator music existed. So I'll have to call into the phone line sometime and hear what that sounds like. I wish we could trigger that so that it would just be a live feed of the show. But again, I don't know how to do that. Maybe that's something that would come down the line. Okay, a couple things before we get to our next caller. Appreciate everybody being patient here. Erica with the super chat. Can you please get Higgins? That's Jay Higgins' dad on your show sometime, please. I think that'd be epic. Go Hawks. Hawk. Yes, Jay Higgins' dad is very, very, very active on social media. I'll have to reach out. I've never reached out to him before, but would love to have him. He's got a lot of energy, and obviously his son has a lot of energy and has been a big part of Iowa's, their stellar defensive play all year. So thank you for the super chat, Erica. And Micro Mage, that's football. 2 word. That's 2 words. That's football. By the way, there are, first of all, that's a Kirk-ism, Don. I think also it's a Brianism. I don't know if it's more of a Kirkism or a Brianism, but if you go to our website, our merch store, and there's a link in the description, there are shirts and there is merchandise, Don, that all it says is that's football. So people can check that out. So thank you for that.
Are they more plentiful than what's the upside?
They're both plentiful, Don, but I don't think anything can ever beat what's the upside. Always number one in my heart. Erica with the super chat. Thank you, Erica. Brett Bielema helped his alma mater today. We owe him a big hearty thank you. Well, we owe him a big hearty L here in a couple of weeks when he comes to town. So they got Iowa last year in Champaign with a 9-6 win. Very similar game to what we saw today. Iowa beat Northwestern 10-7 in Illinois. Illinois beat Iowa 9-6 last year in Illinois. So thank you, Erica, for the super chat. And Lemansky with the super chat. Was there a bug that went through the team last week, Tom? And I think we addressed this, Lemansky. Appreciate the super chat. But that is the word on the street that there perhaps was an illness or a bug. I mean, we're entering flu season, right, Don? And obviously there's all kinds of viruses still floating out there. And this is also bad allergy season. Not that anybody guy would sit out due to allergies, but this is the type of year where you're going to battle some of that. I think back to, was it 2021? And the comments, the controversial comments that Kirk Ferentz made regarding backup at the time, Deuce Hogan. Well, he would have been third stringer at the time, Deuce Hogan. And the reason the question was even asked regarding Deuce traveling to Nebraska was a simple fact that there was a bug moving through the locker room, and I believe Padilla and Petrus had both missed time due to this bug. So who knows? I mean, who knows right now where this ends, and you hope that they can get it under control, whatever it is, if there's substance to that rumor. And perhaps that's what's been going on with Joe Labus. Maybe he just wasn't feeling up to playing, but he was feeling up to being on the sidelines. I don't know. I'd like to think maybe that Linez has proven in practice and taking steps forward. And if that's the case, I'd like to see him in a game. So thank you, Lemansky, for the super chat. Dobby, a free elf. Or Dobby, a free elf, Don. Super sticker from Dobby. Thank you, Dobby. Appreciate that. Never seen that name in a chat. And Dobby, a free elf, adds, at the end of the day, the buck stops with Kirk. Absolutely. Absolutely. Right. He even talked about chain of command during his press conference earlier in the week. And Don, he mentioned, hey, I'm curious to ask you, and we're kind of diverting back to the news from earlier in the week regarding Brian. But one thing that Kirk Ferentz said Tuesday after you and I talked on the air live Monday, I thought Kirk did a really good job in that press conference Tuesday. There was only maybe one minor issue that I had with things he said. Well, that was a tough press conference to face, tough situation to face if you're Kirk Ferentz. One thing I really admired from Kirk on Tuesday is he brought up, I guess, a Fryism, something that Coach Fry often talked about, and he used the chain of command illustration, specifically referring to like the chain of command in the military. And Don, you can relate to this being an Army grad.
Right.
Kirk seemed to recognize that, and I applaud Kirk for bringing that up and humbling himself in a very difficult situation. Can you share what those talks were like with Coach Fry and how he talked about chain of command, I guess, with the football team?
Well, as you know, Coach Fry spent some time in the Marine Corps, and I do recall one staff meeting where he mentioned specifically, he said, next to myself, there are only two people around this table that have any background in the military. Bill Brazier was in the Navy for a period of time, and of course, Coach Patterson was at West Point and then in the Army for a period of time. And he said, all you other guys, I don't think you understand. When I ask you to do something, you need to interpret that as a general asking a lieutenant or a captain to carry out an assignment. You should treat it as a lawful order. That was his point. And he said, I'm trying to be nice by asking you to get things done, but some of you guys don't understand. You need to treat it as a lawful order. It's no different than a general telling a captain what to do or asking a captain to do something. Maybe he's asking him in a nice way just to be nice, I guess. But the understanding should be it's a lawful order, so carry it out. And I think that's probably what Kirk was referencing. I know Hayden did mention some of you guys just don't understand the military. We have a chain of command here just like the military does. Donnie understands and Braze understands, but the rest of you guys, you haven't figured it out yet. You know, in a weak moment, he might have said that. I know he did. He said it a time or two, and I think that's what Kirk was referencing. You know, he was, of course, Dan and Kirk were the young guys on the staff, and maybe they felt he was addressing them more specifically maybe than what he actually did. Maybe they suspected the story came up because of them, maybe. I don't know.
Don, I was impressed with the fact that he referenced that because Kirk often references things maybe from the Fry era, and we all do this, that are convenient in the moment and that maybe reinforces some stance that he's taking, right, with the offense. Well, you know, I remember back in 81 or I remember in 85. The fact that he brought that up in a very difficult moment where a decision had been made above him regarding the future of his son, an offensive coordinator, a decision he was not a part of. I applaud him for doing that. I think that shows Kirk Ferentz's character.
That was his way of acknowledging, I don't have to like it, but I will accept it. You know,
Exactly.
It's part of our chain of command, and I have to accept it, and I have to move on. I think that's right.
All right, let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. We've got OS for Hawks with us. OS for Hawks, welcome.
Good evening, Corey and Coach Don. Good to see you guys.
Good to hear from you, sir.
Yeah, one quick thing I want to say. There's a quarterback at Grundy Center, Iowa, that I think the University of Iowa needs to look at. Grundy Center is going to be back into the playoffs again, and they got a quarterback. That kid is unbelievable. Anyway, enough with high school football. Sorry, I wanted to throw that out there. I had a question for Coach Don, and it has to do with the Nico Raghini interception in the end zone. When they replayed that play, Nico looked like he was open if the ball had been thrown earlier. When they showed the replay, Nico's running. There's nobody there, and the safety had to come all the way over to get to him. It seemed to me like the ball was late. I know one of the other callers said the ball was thrown inside, but to me, it looked like the ball was late. If the ball had been thrown, a second earlier, it would have been a big gain. It wouldn't have been in the end zone, but I think it would have been a big gain. And I just wanted to know what you had seen on that play.
Yeah, the way the route was run, there was never any indication that Nico was going to do anything other than go deep down the field. And the defender who was going across the formation with him, the same guy that intercepted the pass, he tried more to intercept Nico way down the field. And of course, as a result of that, he got on top of Nico, if you will. He got beyond Nico, and he was an impediment to Nico being able to play through to the ball. Obviously, it's a ball that should not have been thrown in that location. The only argument for throwing it at all would have been to throw it behind Nico and give him a chance to come back to the ball. Throw it over his wrong shoulder, as we say. So it's a ball that should not have been thrown because he was clearly well covered. And
at best it should have. I was going to say, at best it should have been a back shoulder throw.
Right.
Yeah.
It looked more like Nico was trying to defend the pass, and the Northwestern guy was the intended receiver. That's how it looked.
Yeah. And I just had a couple positive. I'm not going to harp on our offense, blah, blah, blah. I think us having a stringer today was a huge bonus. I think he made a big difference in the game on several plays. And I also wanted to say, I thought that Jackson and Higgins at linebacker played unbelievable game. Higgins, that play on the goal line, that hit on the goal line there was that gets me going. I love seeing a big hit, and that I love that. And I thought Logan Lee played an unbelievable game. The only question I had too was, do we know who would replace Bo Stevens?
Well, I don't even know, was Bo's playing on the right or the left?
To be quite honest, I don't remember either.
I think he was playing on the left, as I recall.
I mean, they like to have, I think George has talked about, they like to have guys who are fairly interchangeable. So if Tyler Ellsbury is not taking snaps at guard because he's at center with Logan Jones out, Rusty Feth might be banged up, they're probably going to be mixing and matching. But of course, you've got Connor Colby and trying to think who else has gotten snaps on the inside there, Don. Again, Feth, Bo Stevens, Tyler Ellsbury. Man, I'm drawing a blank here. Am I missing somebody? If they're down Jones and Bo Stevens and Feth, that creates some issues potentially there.
At some point, you would think Parker might be involved, and then maybe we move a tackle inside.
You'd have to move. You probably have to move. Yeah, you'd have to move Dunker inside, and I can't imagine Iowa doing that at this point.
But if we're running low on guards, somebody's got to move inside.
Right. I'm just looking to see if I know I'm missing somebody on the depth chart. Nick DeJean. Is Nick DeJean healthy right now? I didn't notice Nick out there. Maybe he was.
He got holding one time. I do know that.
So Nick DeJean right now, and Feth, we don't know that he's out, but if Feth is out, Logan Jones is out, Stevens is out, then I would guess you're going to look at a lineup of Mason Richmond, assuming he's healthy, and then a combination of Nick DeJean, Connor Colby, whether one be, I'm guessing Nick DeJean would be at left, Connor would be at right, Tyler Ellsbury be the center, and then you have Dunker at right tackle, but then you're really thin.
Yeah. When DeJean was flagged, he was playing left tackle.
He was at left tackle? He was in for Richmond at left tackle?
I think so. That's what I have in my
Well,
notes.
and I know Tom mentioned Richmond kind of dealing with some issues. If he's out, then I think you have to look at DeJean Parker, although I'm not there every day. I don't know. But, boy, they brought him in the offseason, Don, and I'm guessing maybe they hoped they could get him up to speed quicker than they have. But it'd be nice if they could get him in there during an important period of time in the season. So, anyways, anything else?
Just one last thing. The commentators also mentioned something, and like I said, I don't like hitting on somebody, but they basically mentioned that Deacon Hill possibly caused Iowa missing 6 points. That the interception, cost us a missed field goal opportunity at worst. And then I'm trying to think what the other one was. Oh, the strip play where we lost how many yards, had to recover, and then we weren't able to. We got taken out of field goal range, and they basically commented that Iowa has a hard time offense, and those kind of plays are extremely detrimental to Iowa.
Yeah, I agree. And it was brought up on the broadcast. I think it was Kyle Rudolph. And it's funny, you have a former tight end talking about it, but he was right. I think, Don, you're a former quarterback's coach, so I guess you probably have more authority on it than Kyle would. But is that just an internal clock issue with Deacon? With him, it seems like he's so susceptible, not only to getting sacked, but getting sacked, whether it be from his blind side or from wherever, because his internal clock is not going off.
Yeah, it's a combination of that and just having better pocket awareness. Sometimes, you just have you have two things that could cause you to pull the ball down and try to make something out of nothing, i.e. run forward somewhere. One would simply be you can't find anybody to throw the ball to. And at that point, you're inclined to pull the ball down and try to at least work your way back toward the line of scrimmage. And then beyond that, of course, if the pocket collapses, a good quarterback will sense that and pull the ball down simply because the route hadn't had a chance to develop. The pressure showed up too early. So you have both categories. It's safe to say, now that was a ball, correct me if I'm wrong, he got stripped off the backside. It came off the edge, right?
Correct.
Yes.
And so that was one clearly where the clock should have gone off in his head that I'm uncomfortably long back here in this pocket. And if you can't find someone, that's an indication. Again, you should pull the ball down, protect the ball, work back toward the line of scrimmage. As I used to remind our guys all the time, a sack for -2 is still a sack, but it's a lot different than a sack for -8. So work back toward the line of scrimmage. Instead of 3rd and 8, you end up with 3rd and 2. That's a big difference if you get sacked on an early down. That 6-yard differential could be the difference in short yardage on critical down and long yardage on that same critical down. So that's the argument for stepping up in the pocket. Right now, he doesn't have a real good awareness of that. And obviously, it was a nice play by the edge rusher. And you can blame the tackle, but at some point, the tackle's going to get beat. I do remember Tristan Wirth said this, that somebody asked him, what did Brady tell you when you were going to be a rookie playing right tackle for Tampa Bay? And he said, Brady told me this. Don't ever get beat inside. And if you are beat off the edge, just be sure it doesn't happen too early. And that's good advice for any tackle versus an edge rusher. Never get beat inside. And if you do get beaten off the edge, just be sure it doesn't happen until what would be considered to be an okay amount of time. Because by then he stepped up in the pocket anyway. Not vulnerable off the edge.
Gentlemen, thank you for taking my call. I love the show. And I always love talking to you, Coach Don. You guys have a great weekend.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate OS Fox calling in, and had a couple people who I think maybe had to jump off. I know they're we're actually making good headway on the phone line, but just be patient. If you're here to talk to Coach Patterson, we'll get you on here very soon. Dobby, a free elf. At the end of the day, the buck stops with Kirk. I think we read that already. But Dobby adds, Corey and Don, love your show. Thank you. Appreciate that super chat. Thank you for being here. And Arnie Millard, great show, Corey and Coach Patterson. Love you guys. Thank you, Arnie. Or I'm sorry, is that not Arnie? I'm combining an R with an M. It's actually Amy. Amy, thank you. I got to get glasses, I guess, Don. But Amy, thank you for that super chat and appreciate you being here. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. And let's check in on the phone line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson. Who's on the line?
Hey, guys. This is Max. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. Good to hear from you, Max.
Yeah, thanks. Just curious that there was a sighting today in Wrigleyville. Bob Stoops was present, and curious to see if you guys have any thoughts about the proposition of Bob coming in maybe as an interim or even as an OC. It just seems like in the day and age of the Deion Sanders NIL world that people might be really rooting for him to come on in and transform the program.
Well, for some reason, the head coaching job opens at the end of the season. Regardless of what Kirk has said, I'd be all for entertaining that. I am not all for entertaining him as an offensive coordinator, Don, and I doubt he's auditioning to call plays, given his history as a defensive coach. I did not know that he was at Wrigley. I did not see that. And, of course, the game was not a Fox game. It was a Peacock NBC game. But just your thoughts on Bobby.
Well, I think I've always said Bobby's an outstanding head coach. I think Bobby would even tell you he's not an offensive coach. The best way I could explain it to our listeners, football is more specialized than what many people realize. And by that, I mean this. Think of it this way. An orthopedic surgeon is a doctor, and so is an oral surgeon, right? One pulls teeth for a living. The other one works on knees and other joints. Entirely different job description, even though they're both MDs, or at least, well, maybe an oral surgeon is not an MD. I guess there's some other kind of doctor. They're both doctors. I'll say it that way. So you get my drift. Or another, maybe a better example, an orthopedic surgeon versus a heart doctor. I'm trying to think. There's two kinds of heart doctors. There are plumbers and there are electricians. I know what it is. Electrophysiologist is the term. That's an electrician for hearts. I know that because I had an electrician for hearts, and he's referred to as an electrophysiologist. That's his title. He knows everything there is to know about hearts. He knows virtually nothing about knees or other joints. So football's so specialized. I think Bob Stoops would tell you, no, I shouldn't be an offensive coordinator because I've never been an offensive coach. I've been a head coach, and the smartest thing he did was hire a great offensive coordinator, because Bobby could be a huge resource for the defensive staff, but not so much for the offensive staff. Now, as the head coach, he still make all the big decisions, like whether or not to go for it on fourth down, or whether or not to go play action on second and short. That infamous waste down we're always talking about, Corey. Maybe he would say, take a shot. That's all he has to say as a head coach. But he's not going to tell the offensive coordinator what play to run. That's the offensive coordinator's job. And Bobby would say, I'm not qualified to be an OC. I've been a DC a good part of my life. I've been a head coach for a long time, but I'm not qualified to be an OC. And that's exactly why I should have never been considered to be a defensive coordinator, is because I coached offense all those years. So football's specialized, and you can't just switch up very easily to the other side of the ball. A good example in the pros, for those Patriot fans out there, you guys had a really good defensive coordinator by the name of Matt Patricia. And your head coach decided to move Matt Patricia to the offensive side of the ball and make him the offensive coordinator, and it didn't go well. Incidentally, he made that move because a guy named Belichick became the defensive coordinator, if I'm not mistaken. So, even a professional coach cannot just arbitrarily switch from one side of the ball to the other. It's apples and oranges. It's too different.
Yeah, thank you, Coach. And I'll just refer listeners to Scott Docterman's Twitter. He had a picture of Coach Bob Stoops there in Wrigleyville at one of the Bar and Grills, and just found it curious that he was in town for the event, and wasn't sure if his sighting indicated some kind of interest in the program, or if he was just there to enjoy the team that he likely roots for most of the time on Saturdays. But just thoughts quickly, if I may, Coach, on who you might identify as potential replacements for Brian, whether that be internal promotions or people out there in D1 OC positions or other positions that you think might mesh well with the program.
Sure. Well, you've heard me mention the coach at Washington, and I don't know the guy at all. I'm just impressed with what I've heard about him. I would simply say this: take a look at those offenses that appear to be way ahead of the curve with how they're playing, and investigate to the point where you make sure that it's not just talent driven. Maybe I'll give you an example: Southern Cal. Well, the guy won the Heisman last year. I don't really care too much who the offensive coordinator is at Southern Cal, because I believe their talent is off the charts. So I don't know that he deserves a whole lot of credit for what they're doing, because last time I checked, that quarterback's going to be the first player drafted this next year. That may all change, of course, but I think that right now there's a good chance he might be the first guy taken in the draft. So I would simply look at teams that seem to play way above their talent level. And it's not easy to evaluate that. You'd have to have somebody that knows a lot about football to assist you with that search. Obviously, Kirk is more than qualified to identify who that next OC could be. And maybe the athletic director could figure in, if only because she could visit with the counterparts, athletic directors at other schools. And of course, those kind of schools do not want to lose a good coach either. But they simply know, and a good example is the guy at Washington. I guess right now it wouldn't be a surprise to anyone if he was offered a head coaching job for next fall, with the way this fall's gone for him, and maybe the way the last year or two's gone for him. But I still argue that I would think at the very least, he would at least be willing to listen to Kirk, because let's face it, if Kirk wants him to be the OC and to rejuvenate our offense, it's only obvious Kirk's not going to coach forever, and maybe this guy could be the head coach in waiting. Maybe he could be the next head coach. And maybe that appeals to him, if only because he's born and raised in the state of Iowa. I believe he's raised in Western Iowa, I think, wasn't he, Corey?
Yeah, that's the only caveat with all this, is maybe he's interested in returning back to Iowa. But at the same time, I don't think being the OC at Iowa is no better than being the OC at Washington. They're also moving to the Big Ten next year. They've been a better program as far as national relevance in recent time. Now, maybe, just maybe, he looks at the job as an opportunity to potentially be the next head coach at Iowa. But like you said, Don, he may be getting some Power 5 offers. Maybe not Power 5 offers, but maybe after this season, if that Washington offense continues to look really good and
Right.
if they perform on the national level and perform well in January, I wouldn't be shocked if he gets not only some offers from some powers that have some openings or some head coaching jobs at other Power 5. So does he want to go back to Iowa and be an OC for another few years, or would he rather accept maybe a middling or even lower tier Power 5 head coaching job right away? That could be a question he has to face if Iowa
Right.
even calls.
Right. We simply don't know. But I would simply suggest to you, we need to be really thorough with our search. It needs to
I think we lost Coach Patterson. We'll see if we can get him back. Max, I was just going to add in. I know people have
sure.
criticized the notion of Paul Chryst. As I said earlier in the show, he's a former quarterback himself. He understands the passing game. You go back and look when he was the OC at Wisconsin, they were actually pretty good. Now, granted, they had some really talented backs during that stretch of time, and they've had dominant O-lines for quite some time. We made a list the other day on a live show. I don't know if you caught it, but a list of potential candidates, and some of these were fan submitted. Some of these were names that I brought up or Coach Patterson brought up. Andy Ludwig is an interesting name from Utah. And, of course, Tim Polasek is one that's going to be tossed around because of his connections to Iowa, and of course he's the OC out at Wyoming. He's been an offensive coordinator at a couple different levels, including North Dakota State, which is a power, of course. I think the most intriguing name that's probably maybe most unlikely, and it's not John Budmeyer or Paul Christ or even an Andy Ludwig. I actually think it's Nate Shieldhouse at Iowa State. And I say that only because Nate has now coached several positions here at Iowa State. And I say here at Iowa State because he's here names. And, Iowa State hasn't been great offensively this year, but his dad played at Iowa. He, of course, Nate was a quarterback at Illinois, so he's familiar with the conference. Now, I doubt he would make that jump, and I actually doubt Iowa would try to poach him from Iowa State, but that's the most intriguing name. I'd be curious if Kirk would even consider making that phone call, because I do like what Nate Shieldhouse has cooking there, but and given his connections to Iowa, I think we've got Coach Patterson back. Don, if you wanted to finish your thought.
Yeah, gosh, I'm trying to think of exactly where I left off. I apologize if the connection went bad. I just think that there's a lot to be said for really being thorough with, we need to look under every rock we can find to pick the person that best satisfies our needs. And they don't necessarily have, I know the point too, Corey, mentioning the coach at Washington. I think we'd be kind of foolish to not consider all coaches with a background in the Pac-12, if only because those OCs, if they're an OC in the Pac-12, they've been working to figure out how to solve the defenses involving Oregon, Washington, Southern Cal, and UCLA. 4 teams that we're going to run into, only 2 of them next year, but I'm sure the other 2 the following year.
Well, some of the other reason why you might consider looking out west for a coach is some of those teams aren't going to have as solid of homes as they do this year. Now, I know Washington State, I think they run an air raid, but they're an example. They don't have a home right now. They don't have a conference to go to.
Right.
And they'll find one, but we don't know if it's going to be the Big 12. Certainly, it's not going to be the Big 10. It doesn't look like. They've got a really good offense, but it's very pass heavy. So Kirk's not going to bring that guy in. I don't know anything about the Oregon State offense. Obviously, they've been a solid program in recent time, but I think you're right. Look under every rock. Look out west with conference realignment. Can you take advantage of some situations? And certainly the strength of the conference, maybe even from some Big 12 teams, because it's clear right now, Don, even with the addition of some of those teams to the Big 12, the SEC and the Big 10 are going to be the 2 powers moving forward. So
Right.
Is it feasible to think, hey, maybe there's a really good OC at a Big 12 school, conference in which offense has been aplenty in the last 10 years. Maybe there's an OC from a Big 12 school that'd be interested in jumping ship to a more secure job. Obviously, it's got some baggage with the reputation of the Iowa offense, but perhaps that would be a way of looking at this as well. I'm curious to how Kirk approaches all this.
I'll give you another example. You mentioned the Big 12. Let's face it, there's a game on tonight that has a lot of interest. That would be the one over in Ames. And here's what you might or might not be aware of, Corey. The offensive coordinator at Kansas used to be a grad assistant for me at Western Illinois. Matter of fact, we were watching them play one time, and Lisa's kind of paying half attention to the game. And she made the observation. She said, Andy Kotelnicki really learned his lesson well at Western Illinois. And by that, she simply meant the KU offense reminded her a lot of the Western Illinois offense, or for that matter, the Iowa offense back in the 80s and 90s. And Andy Kotelnicki is an outstanding coach. And he is the offensive coordinator of KU, and they've been putting up points against just about everyone. And of course, they have a quarterback that's way above average. But if you just watch one KU game, you have to give them credit for having a lot of imagination and a lot of ingenuity in their offense. It's not easy to defend it because it really challenges you all over the place. If those listeners that are able to watch some of the game tonight, take a look at the KU offense. As well as Iowa State plays defense, and I think the world of John Hawkeye. He's one of the best defensive coaches in all of college football. But they'll be straining to slow KU down because KU is a very good offense.
Anything else, Max?
Yeah, I just appreciate the commentary. I had, as a part of the question, asked about perhaps an internal promotion within the program. We have some skilled coaches there, but it sounds like the focus, at least from your perspectives, is, external. And I'm just thinking in terms of the NIL and the change in the conference, adding new teams that really pump up their offensive strategy, that this is an auspicious time for either an incredible hire or, an incredibly disappointing hire. And I think if we miss the window of opportunity here, that, I fear, like a lot of other fans, that we could devolve into, what Nebraska is experiencing, or some of the other schools that have really struggled to maintain consistency, that being one of the overarching themes of our program. So thanks again. Curious to see what happens, and like all the other fans, rooting for us either way.
Absolutely. Thank you for the call, Max.
Thank you.
The only internal hire I could possibly imagine, Don, would be John Budmeyer. And that's not the one I'm rooting for. Nothing against John. I know you have a strong relationship with his family. He's married into the Hartlieb family, and I'm sure he's a great guy, maybe a great quarterback's coach. We haven't really seen the results at the quarterback position that would even make me think of him as a strong candidate. But just the fact that he's here and he's got familiarity with Cade McNamara, but I hope they don't go that direction. If they do, then I hope he can help them. He is a former quarterback and a former quarterback's coach who has called plays at an FBS school, if we want to look at the glass as half full.
But to go one step further, we need to go back and look at the results at Colorado State, and the results, to be kind, the results were not that impressive.
Correct. All right. We're trudging along here. Let's Ryan in the chat. Good thing no one broke a leg in that divot. Absolutely. That was a really weird situation. Seems like weird things happen when they play at Northwestern. Remember the protesters 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Excuse the loud motorcycle out here. By the way, I got my window open here, and I have not heard the Iowa State sirens for every time they score go off. So usually I can hear those. I don't hear them. Now, maybe I'm just so honed in on this, but I have not checked in on the Iowa State score. Guess it's not going great, but I'll check in on that here in a little bit. A couple of comments in the chat. ZJ says, why did Caleb Brown have to change his number to 81? Well, they ran Cooper DeJean in. Of course, Cooper DeJean's number 3, so I guess they could have changed Cooper's number, but somebody had to change numbers. Drew says, when did Caleb Brown catch a pass? Well, it was on that drive that produced the field goal. It was a huge catch for Caleb Brown, his first career catch at Iowa, Don. So that's
by the way, the only explosive play we had all day, I believe, 23 yards, and it set up the game-winning field goal.
Yeah. By the way, there's a reason why I'm not hearing a lot of sirens. Kansas leads Iowa State 21-3 right now. So just as I was touting Nate Shieldhouse, the Cyclones stuck at 3 on their own 25-yard line in the third quarter of that game, of course, over on ESPN. Also, as a score update for everybody, Michigan leading Purdue at halftime 20-6. Of course, the Wolverines. I want to get your take before we get off of here about the scandal up there in Ann Arbor. Washington, your boy Ryan Grubb, Don. First half, they've got 35 points.
And who are they playing?
USC.
Let's not go after the Southern Cal defensive coordinator to replace Phil Parker someday.
Yes.
If it's the same guy, he doesn't deserve any mention at all.
Eric Weidman, what was wrong with Caleb Johnson? We don't know. As of right now, he was there at the game but did not play. Jake, I know this doesn't matter anymore, Corey, with the little icon off the screen, and I did take the points per game tracker off the screen, Don. And given the situation, in tribute to Brian and in respect to Brian, I took it off the screen. So
I noticed that. I mentioned that to my wife, and she was very pleased that you did that. Took it down of your own volition. She said, good for Corey. That was the right thing to do.
If Lisa's proud of me, then I know I did something right. But I don't know, what would the average be now, Don? Have you figured that out?
I haven't even thought about it. Let me think where we were. We were 19.8. Is that right? Before?
That sounds right.
That is right, because that's 8 times 19, 19.5 is what it was, because that's 156 points. So 10 more makes 166. That would be in 9 games, right? 166 divided by 9. What's that? 18.5 or something. I don't know. it's nowhere close to 25, that's for sure. We're trending down still, Corey. It's a good thing you don't have your little Brian icon up there because it's trending in the wrong direction all over again.
Sam wants to know what was wrong with Torrey Taylor today. Some unorthodox punts. He's had some bad days at times, Don. How would you explain Torrey's struggles?
I would simply say, golfers have off days. Major league pitchers have off days. A punter can have an off day too, and I think he did. I think the winds probably had something to do with it. The winds are tricky. They're right there on the lake. He just didn't connect like he normally does. Let's face it, right there at the end when we were backed up, I'm thinking, Corey's had an off day, but this is a time when we need him to boom a punt down the field, and it didn't happen then either. It was a line drive that was fielded on the run and returned for good yardage, and that set up their 22-yard touchdown drive, I believe it was.
Drew, I have nothing against you. I don't know why he says I don't like him, but absolutely not. Tanner says, yeah, USC, Washington, Iowa, Northwestern proved there's 2 different ways to win football games. I'm hearing cheering, Don. I hear cheering. Did we just get a score from Iowa State? This is the most... Am I cheering, or am I hearing Coyotes? I don't know what I'm hearing, Don.
Are you hearing Jayhawks?
I think, and I mean this seriously, I mean this seriously, I think I just heard a pack of coyotes. I thought that was cheering, and I actually think they're coyotes. So that's not a real common thing. I don't hear that a lot in Ames, but I know a coyote howl or a coyote pack, whatever, when I hear it. So anyways, we can move on. KH says, what is Noah's fate? Well, we don't know. Still waiting on the beautiful NCAA to make a decision on Noah Shannon's fate. Brandon says, Marco should get a series and evaluate in-game effectiveness, adjust as needed. Agree. Scott says, the offense is winning. Deacon is improved, as Kirk said he would. Interestingly, Rutgers and Illinois look tougher. Don, is the offense winning right now, or is the team winning? And is Deacon improved? I have not seen that.
I would have assessing it that way, frankly. Just because too many balls. We've been lucky in so many ways. There were a couple other balls today that might have ended up as interceptions, and thankfully they didn't.
Drew says, address the Labus doghouse rumors. I don't know. I don't know what the doghouse rumors are. I haven't heard. I'm not on message boards. But yeah, we had Tom Kakert on earlier, and he suspects that Linez has passed him up, but we don't know. Harpo, who got hurt on the O-line? Was it number 70? Yes, it was. Bo Stevens. Can Iowa move Deacon Hill to his spot? Next man up. Well, I know he's trying to be funny, but they're going to be getting thin on bodies if they keep losing guys up front, Don. Esther wants to know, Coach Patterson, can you give us an update on the player who got injured? Is he out for the rest of the season?
I do not know.
Don does not know, but that was Bo Stevens, Esther, and we wish the best to Bo, and hopefully.
It's never a good sign if you have to be hauled off on the little vehicle they got.
Right. And Charles, who's also waiting in our queue. I know he's been waiting for quite a while, so thank you, Charles. He says, a new OC on the horizon. You typically like to go with up-and-coming young coaches, but knowing Kirk, what are your thoughts on former Iowa coach Joe Philbin led Iowa to their best offenses from 99 to 2002. He's a former O-line guy, Don. Do you bring in Joe Philbin at this point?
I do know Joe Philbin. Joe Philbin is an absolute outstanding coach. He was back in 99 through 02, and he's been one ever since. I don't know what Joe's doing now. I don't know how old Joe is. Obviously, he's not too far off of Kirk's age, I would think. But you've heard me say before, it wouldn't bother me at all for Kirk to ask Joe Philbin to come in, and the agreement was we're going to be here for a couple, 3 or 4 years, whatever they decide. And we're going to leave it in a lot better place than where it is right now. We need somebody on offense to help Kirk to get that done. And I think Joe Philbin could be one of those people that can do it.
All right, let's hit our next caller here who's been on hold for a long, long time. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach Don Patterson, who's on the line.
Hey, Corey, Don, it's Kyle.
Hey, Kyle.
How you guys doing tonight?
Doing good, man. How are you?
I'm fine. Keeping an eye on LSU and Alabama at that tied at 21 and a half. I would kill to have LSU's offense because they're number one in every category.
21-21 at halftime. And by the way, as far as a score shout out, Don, how about the Army Cadets 23-3 over an undefeated Air Force team today? So good win.
And that game was played out west. It was played in Denver.
Yep. Go ahead, Kyle. Sorry to interrupt you.
All right. I'm really getting tired of these ugly wins. I really don't want to deal with it no more, but I'm tired of the way they've been playing. Like when I was watching today, I keep saying I'm still not having fun no more. And my dad was like, "Don't watch." Like I'm not quitting watching the team. I have to keep watching. That's the only said. I'm pretty sure you guys are not having fun with the way they're playing. You all agree with that?
You know what I enjoy doing? I enjoy spending time with friends and watching games and eating food and making the football watching experience just that, an experience. But it is also a different type of experience watching the Iowa offense, Don. But you love football, right? I mean, it's probably not fun for you to watch Iowa's offense, given your history as an Iowa offensive coach and as an acute quarterbacks coach and offensive play caller. But we both love football. So
a friend of mine described it as a little bit like a root canal.
Yeah.
A dental appointment that you don't look forward to, but you have to honor that appointment because you don't want to operate without any teeth. So if it feels a little bit like a root canal, maybe you could justify it as still being necessary.
Yeah. Well, I think at halftime, what the team needs is a Bobby Knight speech to get them tough because they're not playing tough football.
Well, they are on defense, but yeah, they need something. I don't know if Bobby Knight's the answer.
Well, I would have played one of his halftime speeches on YouTube just to get on their butts about not playing well.
I'll agree with you on this, Kyle. Bobby Knight was one of a kind, and he's a coaching legend who I'm sure will be missed.
And a controversial one.
Absolutely.
When I was during the game, like in the end of the first half, like Northwestern had the ball, like we're getting them stops. We called the timeouts. We get the ball back, take a knee at halftime. I mean, what was the point of doing that? Even though we can't move the ball, instead of wasting the timeouts.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. I was just checking my notes to see how it actually happened because you got to realize it was 0-0 at the time. They did throw incomplete. Let me find it here. Northwestern, I'm sorry, they ran out of bounds with the ball. That's what it was. They ran out of bounds. Iowa keeps one timeout. We choose to take a knee and not even use our last timeout. So my point is, I forget how many seconds were left. Maybe we were maybe the -30, I think, thereabouts. Corey, does that sound right?
That sounds about right, yeah.
Somewhere in that range. And I think we had at least, isn't that where they put the time back on the clock to go to 41 maybe?
Yes.
Yeah. So we would have had several snaps. And I was just a little surprised, not that we do anything stupid, but if we could just get the ball out toward midfield, if nothing else, we could throw up a Hail Mary at the last play of the half and have a chance to luck out into a scoring play, or maybe we simply get in field goal range and kick a long field goal. That's a possibility. Our kicker's got such good range. We didn't need that many yards. It was a little bit like the Minnesota game in that regard. We had time. We could at least get in 3 or 4 snaps. Even if we picked up 20 yards, we'd be in field goal range, I think, or we'd be getting close. Maybe we needed more than 20. Maybe we needed 30 yards. But the point is we're 0-0, and we simply didn't want to take a chance, which does give you insight into how the coaches felt at that time. They felt we're more likely to mess this up than the odds are more likely that we're going to have a bad outcome here at the end of the half than if we do nothing at all. So let's just take a knee and go in, and that's a safe thing to do, of course, because our defense had played so well in the first half. But it was disappointing that we really had no confidence that we could move the ball a little bit and maybe pick up 3 points at the horn, or even better yet, Hail Mary into the end zone for a touchdown. That's always a possibility, of course.
Anything else, Kyle?
Two quick things. We didn't get that block punt in the third quarter. We would have lost the game, but thankfully, Terrell Thompson made that block. And is this going to go back to last year? Like, the fans were like begging for like a QB change, but I feel like we're doing this again. Like, the only way we're going to get a QB change is Deacon Hill goes out with an injury, which I don't want to see that happen, but that's probably what my guess is.
Well, I'm all for a QB change at this point, especially with a young Marco Linez there. I don't know if that we'll get that. Obviously, Cooper DeJean is not the future at quarterback. Nobody's claiming that. So I'd be all for seeing Marco Linez get some snaps. And again, we don't know what's going on with Joe Labus right now, but I've been a big fan of Marco since he committed. Don, I know you like the young man as well. Carries himself very well. He's got really good athleticism, very mobile, but we won't be able to see that until he's given a chance to shine the field. We'll see when that happens, if it happens. Thank you, Kyle.
All right. That's all I got today. Thanks for taking my call, and talk to you next time.
Thank you, sir. And Eric here. Coach, love your insight and knowledge of the game. Really, really enjoyed this show. Corey, you're great too. Thank you, Eric. Do appreciate that. Always great to hear the compliments to the show. And of course, Coach Patterson makes this show happen. Brian, with the super chat, or excuse me, the Venmo donation / chat, would it have been more beneficial to the defense of Iowa if they had taken a safety when they were up 7-0 instead of punting? Don, I didn't think about that. Would there be any situation where you would encourage them to take a safety in that situation? As opposed to in the short
more faith in our punter.
Okay.
The
But he
ball
did not.
I think the ball on that snap was probably about on the -10. We got off the goal line, maybe -8, something like that. We were not backed up against the end line. I'll say that with Corey. So it was just a bad punt. He hit a line drive punt. They returned it. I think he fielded it maybe on the 44 and returned it 22 yards to the 22. That's at least what poor punt by Taylor. He punted from the 7-yard line. The ball was fielded on the 44. It was returned 22 yards, which set them up first down on the 22. And of course, it took them a long time, but they did score. Incidentally, hats off to the defense. Isn't that incredible? And we finally now, after 12 quarters of play, one team finally scored a touchdown after the last 12 quarters. That's incredible. And I realize that some of these offenses aren't that good, but let's give a lot of credit to our defense because they've done a great job of defending the goal line.
All right. I think we've got a special guest here who joined the show just a second ago that we want to give some time to. So hang tight to Tim in the chat, or in the queue, I should say. We'll get to Tim in just a second. First, want to give a special shout out to our sponsors, Brad Van Meter and his team down at State Farm in Des Moines. If you need an auto insurance quote, or maybe it's a renter's insurance quote, or perhaps even life insurance, even boat insurance, get ready for the warm season. It'll come before you know it. Give Brad and his team a call down in Des Moines, 515-256-6480, or visit him online at bradvanmeter.com. Again, that's www.bradvanmeter.com. You can visit him in person, 4229 Fleur Drive in Des Moines. They're saving people tons of money, especially on auto insurance right now. So give Brad and his team down at State Farm a chance to serve you and your family. All right. I think we've got the father of Iowa kicker, Drew Stevens, on the line. Tim, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Tim, it's great to hear your voice, sir. And I understand that you're back safe from. I'm assuming you're back at the hotel. You're still in Chicago, coming off what was, I'm sure, an interesting experience for you in a baseball stadium, watching your son kick a massive 52-yard kick that really sealed the deal for the Hawkeyes. I wanted to ask you a couple things. I appreciate you jumping on here. First of all, what was the conversation like with Drew postgame?
Just that we were very proud of him, and that we've known him a lot, obviously his whole life, but the fact that he kind of has a blankness to him when he misses, because he don't give a rip. He just goes on to the next kick, and that's kind of a blessing, I think, for a kicker. just have a short-term memory, and he's very good at that. He's really just kind of, okay, I'll go make the next one. So, I think too, some of it, what he was saying is that, he's never kicked in that stadium before, wasn't really sure how the wind would affect the ball, and the field was not great, as you guys saw with the constant repairs. But in the first 5 minutes when they were warming up before the game, he told us that when he was kicking towards the grandstands, that on the left hash, he went to plant and his foot sank about 3 inches in the ground, and he actually flubbed the ball to the left and hit some people in the crowd. So, the field conditions weren't great. You never kicked there before. And I think, I've been going to games at Wrigley growing up in Illinois for a long time. It's definitely tricky wind. Some days you can be, hit a fly ball to right field or right center, and it'll just keep carrying, and it'll get in that basket. And that's kind of what happened on that kick. He hit it, and he said for 45 yards it was pure, and then it just kind of floated. And so that's how he explained it anyway at the when we saw him after the game.
Well, I made the comment when that kick was up in the air, the first one, I thought it was through. In fact, I didn't even see it hit the upright. Somebody that was watching the game with made the comment, oh, he missed it off the right upright. Both of those kicks were good from 60, Don. Well, the first one, of course, ended up right. But as far as distance is concerned, I tweeted out during the game, I have confidence with Drew Stevens from 60 yards. And I reflect back on the Minnesota game 2 weeks ago. Iowa's offense didn't need to do that much. After the Cooper DeJean kick return, punt return was called back, Iowa's offense really only needed probably 15, 20 yards to give Drew Stevens a chance. I don't think people realize how big this kid's leg is. And I made the comment to Coach a little bit ago, Tim. I don't know that I've ever seen that long of a kick. Now, I know kickers are told basically, and maybe, Don, maybe this is not true, or Tim, you can correct me, but based on what I've been told, kickers are basically told to kick the same way regardless if you're kicking a PAT or a field goal. So I've never seen a kicker from 52 yards kick that straight. I actually thought when the kick was lined up, I thought, I don't know that do you want straight away? Sometimes, I don't know if he would have preferred closer to the left hash, but he gets, the kicks from straight away, and that thing just was like an arrow. I don't know where you were sitting, Tim, but man, you watched it on TV. It didn't move at all.
We saw a post game on some of the videos people had posted, and he told us that based on the first kick, he went out there with the second kick and he aimed about 2 yards left of center because the wind in the first kick, was blowing a little bit right. So he kind of wanted to play that, but he's got about a yard or so natural draw on any kick he hits. And you're right, whether it's a field goal from 60 or an extra point, he's supposed to swing the exact same way every time. So an extra point should theoretically be good from 60. So, I mean, that's what he tries to do. And, I did see the video and it was striped, and he kind of told us that, he knew right away the moment he hit it. He said he pured it. It was one of the most pure hits of a football he's had because he barely felt it. He said it was so on the money, and that he was cheering 3 seconds before the crowd because he knew it was in. And so he was kind of delayed reaction, or in the moment it kind of felt like slow motion that the ball get there, and then the crowd reacted and so forth. So he knew right away when he hit it.
And you're comfortable him kicking from 60, right? I mean,
well, I'm comfortable with him kicking from 70, but I am a little biased as daddy ball. So
you make a 70? You think he'd make a 70?
He's made a couple of them in practice. So okay. I don't put it past him. And that game against Minnesota, you're right. I mean, where Cooper, was called down after the review, we did the math, and kicking that direction, we had the wind. So, I mean, we needed about 10 to 12 yards to give him a realistic chance to hit it. And we just, it ended up how it ended up. But he was chomping at the bit to get that chance.
Yeah, and these are my words, not yours, Tim. But I know Coach Patterson and I feel the same way on this. And I think Coach is frozen right now. But if your son had kicked you don't have to comment on this, Tim, but your son had been brought in to kick against Iowa State 2 years ago, or excuse me, it would have been last year. I think Iowa wins that game. I know it was a rainy game. It was a tough kick for Aaron Blom, but a kick from 50 yards or so. I'm curious. You made a comment. It's been a while back. I don't know if you made it on social media. I do follow you on social media, but you made a comment somewhere that I saw about Drew Stevens and his kind of his persona. I mean, you talked a little bit about his kind of mindset of always being just cool, calm, and collected. But I saw him prior to the kick on camera today, spinning the ball like a basketball in his finger. And I couldn't help but think back to something that, I had heard you say prior that, you're all for locking in and maybe cutting down on the pre-play shenanigans, if you will. I don't know if you consider that a shenanigan or if that's just Drew being Drew, but he, spinning the ball in his finger, I kind of was watching it thinking, what's he doing out there? But then he comes up and he kicks a 52-yarder like it's nothing. So just your thoughts on that, Tim.
Well, yeah, he's kind of done that actually since high school. He's, just one of the kind of ticks, I guess, that he has about himself that he does. And he always kind of does this head thing where he kind of like jerks it, setting his face and his head to the side. And then he spins the football. And when he's not going in to kick, he'll dance to the music playing over the loudspeaker. He's, he stays loose that way, I think. He's just, that's just his personality. But I don't think, he's not disinterested or disengaged from the moment. He's just, that's how he deals with it.
Yeah. When I saw him make that kick today, again, seeing him on the sidelines, and I think the NBC cameras even got kind of his teammates kind of looking back at him because they knew, okay, Iowa coaching staff, they're comfortable just running towards the middle of the field and setting up this game-winning kick. And he knew it, and his teammates knew it. Everybody in the stadium watching on TV knew it. Talk about a pressure kick, Don, from 52 yards. The fact that he could kind of act nonchalant and then walks up there and just nails a strike without any doubt, Don.
Here's my reaction as an old coach: as I watch him spinning the ball on his finger, I thought that sounds harder than hitting a 52-yard field goal. So if he's having no difficulty in spinning that football on his finger, I'm pretty sure this kick's going to go down the middle. And sure enough, it did.
Yeah, spinning the ball in his finger, Don. Spinning the ball in his finger while you would think a normal person would have butterflies and maybe a little jittery.
Exactly. I thought, here's a guy that clearly is in control of his faculties. He knows exactly what he's doing. I took it as a really good sign. I'll say that.
Oh, he's mentally tough. There's no question. He believes in himself, and he wants to take every kick there is. And I used to spin the ball on my finger on the sideline, and I think that's probably where he picked it up because he's been doing it for a while. And we'd play catch in the backyard or whatever, and we'd spin it. It's just something we do.
I think it was fortunate. It was obvious by the way we're calling plays. We don't need to be any closer. This is close enough. 50 yards plus, that's fine. Let's not be foolish and try to get closer because we don't have to be any closer. I thought the coaches showed great
those 50
confidence.
pluses aren't guaranteed, Don, but I will say, there were a couple times in that game where we thought we were in field goal range and then we went backwards. So, we didn't know. We thought he might let him try a 58-yarder in the first quarter when they got there, and I think it was the first possession. Actually, we got within about 51 or 52, and then they backed up. And I thought they were going to let him try it then because it was the first quarter, but then we ended up punting.
I don't think, again, I've said it several times, I don't think people realize how big his leg is. I just don't think people do because, that is not a normal thing for anybody to consider. Like, bringing your kicker out, we'll just kick a 58-yarder, maybe at the end of halftime, maybe at the end of a game, but like that Marshall Kane 57-yarder in 2015 against Pitt, like that game, that kick was so big, and Marshall Kane had a big leg as well. But yeah, I'd be comfortable with him from 58, but I'm not Kirk. Don, did you have something you wanted to add for Tim?
Yeah, I was gonna share this with Tim. Tim, let me take you back 2 weeks to the Minnesota game. At the end of the game, I was doing the math, as I always do, when they brought the punt return back. Here's what I figured. I figured we needed 15 yards. 15 yards would have left us with either a 57 or 58-yard kick. I can't remember which one of the two. But I'll say this, I wasn't worried about him getting there with the ball because at halftime, I remember seeing him tee up a ball and hit it 51 yards between the uprights. It actually bounced off the crossbar and went on through. But the rest of that story, he did it on the north end of the field into the wind. And that's why I was confident he would be good from 57 or 8 going to the south end at the end of the game. And unfortunately, he didn't get that opportunity because I'm sure he would have made good on that one too.
Yeah, he told us that Kirk's a little perturbed that the Michigan State kicker has the record inside of Kinnick. So if the opportunity comes up in the next 3 weeks, they're going to let him try to get it at the end of the half situation. Or, obviously if we need it at the end of the game. But Kirk has told him behind closed doors that he would like him to, or like somebody not from another team to have that record.
Is that Janikowski? Is that who's got the record?
No, it was Jonathan Kim from Michigan State. A few weeks ago, he had a 58-yarder. That's the longest kick inside of Kinnick.
I forgot about that. Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah,
it happened.
Marshall Kane had the record before, Don, with that 57-yarder in 15.
Right.
Gotcha.
In Kinnick. There's been longer field goals in college football, just not in Kinnick.
Right.
Sure.
Yeah.
So,
Well,
I trust Drew to take it. He's proved it enough times, I think, in practice and, in his own workouts that when he walks out there, we were in the crowd today when he walked out for the last kick and we're like, he's going to kill this ball. We thought it might get onto Waveland Avenue. So we were confident he could get it there. That's never the issue. We don't think.
Right. Yeah. I don't have any doubt when I watch him kick.
By the way, on a personal note, as a Cardinals fan, I am so happy that my son went into Wrigley and won a game as an away team.
I imagine you are, Tim. I imagine you are. And I'll tell you, this tandem, he and Torrey, I think I'd have a hard time finding a better tandem anywhere in college football, Don. And I can't begin to actually make that claim because I can't. I'm not watching all these 130 some teams. There can't be a better tandem than Torrey and Drew. And Torrey didn't play the best. Drew had a miss from 53, but man, I'd take those two together over any other pairing in the game.
I agree.
So, Tim, thank you for phoning in. Appreciate it. And stay in touch and safe travels. We'll hopefully get another win. Maybe we'll get a record kick against Rutgers on Saturday back in Iowa City.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you, sir. All right. I appreciate Tim Stevens jumping on with us briefly. And let me see here. Lonnie. Thank you for the super sticker, Lonnie. Appreciate the contribution. And I believe we've got, we just lost Charles, who's been on hold a long time. So we're going to skip ahead to Ryan, our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line, Mr. Ryan.
Good evening, gentlemen. How you guys doing?
Good, sir. How are you?
As a Cubs fan, fly the W, I guess. It was really neat to watch Drew Stevens hit the 3-run home run to win the game right over right field, just past the basket. Loved it. I was wondering, though, obviously, like everybody else, I'm kind of frustrated with just hearing the lip service of, well, we got to evaluate yada, yada, when it's pretty clear Deacon is not playing to the level where a D1 quarterback should, especially on a 7-2 team that needs any momentum that it possibly can get. Coach, what, in my opinion, and I was curious what your thoughts are, we get into 3-7 all the time, and that's like, a 3-14 or 15 with with us. Whatever happened to that 15-yard downfield pass to the middle, like a cross route or something? You guys with Hayden did those all the time.
We're nervous about throwing dig routes or in routes, as we sometimes call You're right. And the bottom line, when you have those kind of routes in behind the linebackers, there's somebody underneath the linebackers too. So if the linebacker drops too deep, you dump the ball down in front of them, make them have to come up and tackle. Maybe you get the first down that way. You throw it 5 yards downfield, you pick up 9.
Mm-hmm.
So you just have to have good receiver location. You have the right kind of receiver distribution, and then you got to have a guy that's making good decisions. The one holding the football, he's got to make good choices, and that's part of our problem is we don't have any confidence in his ability to make the right choice.
Because I feel like we're just playing to punt too often, and obviously,
Right.
when you got a great punter, there is a method to that madness. However, the play calling itself, it's scared. It's like they're just calling a scared game. I don't see why I don't see why anybody that plays for the University of Iowa on a historically winning program, you can say, I'm going to die on the hill of Deacon Hill. I didn't mean to pun there either. But I'm not going to trust him to throw a 15-yard first down on 3rd and 10. No, we're going to run for 3 yards up the middle and punt. And if you're a D1 quarterback, you better be able to throw a 15-yard pass on 3rd and 10. Isn't that somewhat of a prerequisite?
Well, you don't have to throw it 5 yards on the first down marker, but it needs to be on or beyond. It needs to be at least close to that marker. Oftentimes, it depends on the team. If they're dropping really deep, I remember when we played Tennessee in the Peach Bowl, they were amazing how often they converted. They needed 8. They dumped the ball to a receiver that was 5 yards downfield, and he would run for 4 more, and they'd make the first down. It got to be terribly frustrating. We still won the bowl game, but it was a struggle. And the only way they converted, they didn't throw the ball beyond the chains. They threw it at least toward the chains, but not beyond. And then they made the first down after the catch. So you don't have to necessarily throw it beyond the chains, but it's at least got to be somewhere close to the chains.
Right. Last question I had. Now, this could be wishful thinking, but a couple of weeks ago, Corey and I were, maybe it was last week, we were kind of calling for Marco Lainez. Well, with 3 more conference games and a bowl game left, so you got 4 games left. This is the cutoff, right? Where theoretically you could play Marco the rest of the way or part of the way, and he is still a freshman.
True.
Correct.
Now,
by the way, real quick.
So my question's obvious.
Hold on
Will we
a second,
see that?
Hold on a second, Ryan. Could the master plan, I don't think this is true, but could the master plan be, hey, he's been taking snaps to 2s all week. We've seen him progress, and now we feel it's safe to put him in the game because if he does take off, we don't got to take him out to preserve the red shirt, and we want to burn a red shirt on a 5th game. Now, if they win the West, then they get 5 games. They have 5 games left. That's the problem. So,
Well,
but that's not part of the matter. Let's not act like Kirk is thinking in those terms. But I get what you're saying, Ryan, and I don't disagree.
We'll cross that bridge when we come to it.
By the way, 50-yard halfback pass from Iowa State. They're now down just 21-11 entering the 4th quarter. So double pass, Nate freaking Shieldhouse. Anyways, go on.
And didn't Kansas's quarterback get hurt too? I've been flipping through. I'm watching.
I don't know.
I'm watching LSU and Roll Tide right now, 28-28. But I think Kansas's quarterback could have gotten injured as well. So
yeah, and Iowa State just converted a 2-point conversion, so it's a 10-point game. Go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I guess the only other thing I'm going to say is none of us know for sure, but it sure sounds like Joey Labus is probably the next one to move on. You lost Carson May, you lost Padilla. Now, none of these guys are guys that we know a whole lot about, to be honest with you, but the attrition part does worry me, and I can't imagine, and I'm not trying to trash on Deacon Hill, but it's hard to imagine when you're turning the ball over and not terribly accurate and you're struggling to move the ball, that the guy behind you that doesn't get a sniff of the field can't start to, think about better opportunities for them. And attrition is a problem. Development at quarterback and wide receiver has been a problem. Hopefully the next guy that comes in can do something about that, whoever that may be. I think Ryan Grubb is kind of laughable. I told Corey that because he plays a style of ball that Kirk just doesn't subscribe to, and I can't imagine Kirk. He wants production, of course, but he wants it his way, right?
Real quick, by the way, I'm sorry. The score, my app is behind. The score, everybody's correcting me in the chat. It's 21-18. Iowa State has cut the lead to 3 now. They were down 3 scores to Kansas. They're now down 3 points with 8-11. So my app was simply behind.
What station are they on?
That's ESPN.
ESPN.
We got to wrap this thing up so I can get over to ESPN.
Yep.
But
anyway, thank you, gentlemen. Go Hawks. And Rutgers is going to be awfully tough. Thank God it's at home.
Yes, thank you, Ryan. Rutgers is going to be tough. All right, we've got one caller on our phone line. We've got Vince in our queue. A couple things in the chat before we get to our callers. Born a Hawkeye says, why does everyone think that former players would be the best options for the OC position? No, not necessarily, right? That's fair, Don. Certainly not Bob Stoops is an offensive player or offensive coordinator because he was not an offensive coach. He was not an offensive player. Not that he doesn't know anything about offense. Jay Norvell, I've heard Don has given some quarterback coaching clinics over the years, and he is a former defensive coach, right? That's what I've heard. I've heard that he's given some quarterback clinics out there, but I don't know that you want Jay Norvell coaching.
I think I might have attended one even.
Kurt says Iowa playbook is huge, according to Drew Tate, and he said it's bigger than any other playbook in college or the pros that he's been associated with. Well, that's the key that he's been associated with, because Drew Tate did not have a long NFL career, and he's coached at UT Martin, Northern Iowa as a tight ends coach, and now he's up in the CFL. So, yeah, I don't know. Don, you've made a comment about the playbook. Also, he was here almost 20 years ago. Let's not forget, I know it's still the Kirk offense, but it's also we're 2 coordinators removed. Jason.
I think I was simply going to state, Corey, I think even the casual observer that doesn't necessarily know that much about college football would suspect that our playbook is not as big as some other teams, just based on observation of the game.
Jason says, Coach, come transfer portal season, what positions would you target? We addressed this earlier in the week, Don. I think you mentioned wide receiver, but it's still early to make those determinations. We don't know what's going to happen to Iowa as far as attrition.
Yeah, we need to figure out, for starters, where are we most hard hit, either by transfer or by graduation? And then beyond that, do we have somebody that's well positioned to take their place? Simple example would be Higgins. Do we have a really logical candidate that's already on the team that we can project to be a great replacement for Higgins? If we don't, we better seriously consider the transfer portal, just as we did with Nick. Nick was a good transfer because we had a need for a guy like Nick Jackson, and he fit right in, and it's all worked out well.
Maybe struggled a little bit early, but he's been fabulous. James says, changing the subject, has Epi's youngest son signed yet? I don't believe so.
Definitely hasn't signed.
Yeah, no, he hasn't signed. Correct. I don't think he's committed anywhere. Ryan says, while losing Doyle is hurt, no one talks about how much of a loss Reese Morgan was. Kirk Ferentz could plug him anywhere. He'd be stout, would be a great O-line coach today for us. Boy, he is a great football coach, Don, and you talked about that. Ben says, Don, how often do you talk to Kirk during the season?
Well, we talk every Wednesday, but that's just primarily an update on Big Ten analytics. So that's it. It's strictly a business conversation, and we don't talk about other things.
Time out here. Kansas, misdirection, 80-yard touchdown pass down the field for a touchdown to respond in Jack Trice Stadium, the Jayhawks are back up 2 scores, courtesy of your old friend, your old GA. Remind me how to say his name again, Don?
Andy Kolonicki.
Kolonicki. Very good. 28-18 is the score with a little under 8 to go in here in Ames. Erica says, is DeJean Parker banged up? Not that I'm aware of. He's just not on the depth chart right now, or he's not playing, I should say. I don't know that he's on the depth chart either. Maybe he's listed as the right tackle backup, but I think they just assume move Nick DeJean over there. But at this point, if Richmond's banged up, we may end up seeing Parker, I would guess, if he's healthy. Rich in Omaha. Love the show. Thanks, Coach Patterson. Thank you, Rich. Silas says, a joy every week to have you both hosting a post-game show. Look forward to it, win or loss. Thank you, sir. And Michelle with a compliment as well says, love watching you guys after each game. Makes my weekend and learning a lot too. Appreciate that, Michelle. One loss parlays, Coach Patterson. What do you think about William? How do you say that last name, Don?
Inge.
How do you feel about his coaching job right now in Washington?
Well, I don't know any particulars. I know they've given up some points here and there, I guess. But I know that Bill Inge is an outstanding coach. He always has been. He always will be. He certainly had success wherever he's been. He was part of our staff at Buffalo and had a lot to do with us being able to win at Buffalo. So I'm not surprised that he's in a position of leadership with the Huskies because he's that kind of leader. He's an outstanding coach and a great person.
Silas Soul, how about that game-changing blocked punt? It was good to see Ontario Thompson get those big mitts on another punt, Don, and big play. And that, of course, ended up producing the touchdown. Iowa converted in the red zone. And Naveed, thank you for this, Naveed. By the way, bowl game does not count against a red shirt. So Linez could theoretically play in every game from here on out. That's good to know, Don.
Yeah,
so,
that is good to
if that's true, I'm assuming that's true, then yeah, he can play, including in a Big Ten championship game. Charles says, appreciate you answering my question earlier. Other thing I wanted to ask, could we give serious consideration to bringing Chris Doyle back? Your thoughts?
Probably not.
Yeah, not happening. I mean,
Yeah.
Whether you think that's a problem or not, it's just not happening.
Yeah, he's identified with that particular problem, and in that regard, he's untouchable.
Correct. Let's see here. David wants to know about predictions for bowl games. Man, I don't. I sure don't look at predictions at this point. I don't look at bowl predictions until we get to December. I just don't. I've never been that type of person. But I don't know. If they win the West and they end up 10-2, Don, and then go 10-3, they're probably back in Florida. I don't know. I don't think they're probably out of consideration for the Las Vegas Bowl unless they lose 2 of their last 3. But man, I don't even know the lineup anymore. I just don't follow it enough.
Yeah, me neither.
All right. And sports news. Why is Ontario Thompson not starting? Well, they're really deep up front. He'll get his time. And right now he's showing out on special teams. Yeah, and Thor brings up the playbook for Ontario maybe being a learning curve. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Vince is on the line. Vince, welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on. Really appreciate being on. Enjoy the show. All I have is a message for Coach. And, hey, Coach, it's good to see you. We met down at Steve Rowe's retirement party back in June.
Okay.
And
Steve Rose, he's a good man.
Well, it's great to see you there. And also, I just wanted to tell you, I got a photograph coming your way. I'm going to leave it. I'm going to send it to Matt Weitzel. And he said leave it at the football complex for you. So I'll be looking for it. And it's not as good as some of my other pictures that you've seen, but I think you'll like it. So I just want to give you a heads up. And hopefully next time in Iowa City, we can get together.
Well,
I'll give you contact information. So
I have a lot to look forward to. I appreciate that.
You got it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Vince. Appreciate you calling in. Okay, so
don't have
there you
any
go.
idea about the photo. That'll be interesting.
That will be interesting. I'll be interested to hear what happens here in a few days when you get that photo. Dude Liberty says, I'm sure Doyle would sign up to coach for a guy that threw him under the bus. Probably Not either way. I don't think either party would probably. It just, again, not going to happen. Regardless, if you think Kirk Ferentz threw him under the bus or not, that's just not going to happen. All right. Let me see here. We're wrapping things up, and yeah, Iowa State right now still 28-18, just under 8 minutes to play. By the way, how about this, Don? West Virginia beating BYU 37-0, 37-0.
And that had to be played in West Virginia, I bet.
It is. Iowa State plays, I think, at Provo next week. They got a shot at winning that game. West Virginia's not. They have obviously taken a step forward, but wow. And Michigan leading Purdue 27-6. Washington on top of USC in the third quarter, 42-35. And they've got the ball. Kentucky leading Mississippi State 24-3. Alabama leading LSU in the third quarter, 34-28. North Carolina State up on Miami 10-6. Wazoo and Stanford locked at 0. Another Iowa game there in the second quarter. Out in, that game's actually being played at Washington State. And do we have any other games of relevance right now? Oregon State, Colorado about to get underway, as is UCLA and Arizona. So still some good football here on this Saturday to get to. And before we get to I believe what's going to be our final caller of the night, and appreciate we've got about 350 people still on here between our two channels. Before we get to our final caller, I want to thank Iowa Smokehouse and their awesome meat products, folks. Tasting is believing, and why go anywhere else for your snacking needs? Visit iowasmokehouse.com. And yes, they've got a great line of products available in your local convenience stores, grocery stores, etc. But just great stuff from Iowa Smokehouse. And of course, they are sponsoring the post-game show throughout the year with Coach Patterson. They offer a full lineup sure to satisfy you and your family's snacking needs for game day with their beef jerky, their meat sticks, their steak bites, ketchups, barbecue sauces. You'll never need to look anywhere else. Tasting is believing. Visit iowasmokehouse.com. Use the code Hawkeyes. Again, that's the code Hawkeyes for 15% off your total order. Thank you to Iowa Smokehouse in the heart of central Iowa, down in, well, I shouldn't say heart of central Iowa. They're in kind of south central Iowa, right? Kind of the Albia, Ottumwa. That's kind of their home base, but Albia. And again, we appreciate Iowa Smokehouse being a part of post-game coverage here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Let's go to our final caller of the night on our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach John Patterson. Who's on the line?
Zach, how's it going, Corey?
Good. How are you, sir?
A win is a win is a win.
It very much is,
I guess.
Zach.
Being a Cubs fan, it was nice to see that game at Wrigley. Dan Kiermaier, who actually is the Cubs head grounds crew, is regarded as one of the better ones. So I'm shocked that the field was in such bad shape.
Well, it sounds like that was a part of the. I mean, I don't know how all that works. That's why I think traditionally the idea of a baseball game or a football game being played in a baseball stadium is not a good idea. I've seen too many problems come from that. I'm sure Kirk agrees. I think about the Pinstripe Bowl in 2017, the game on ice, and then that game has had issues with other bowl games, other teams since 2017. I just don't think it's a good idea for a number of reasons. But what do I know?
Well, yeah, and when this game was originally scheduled, I actually looked at the baseball schedule, and if the Cubs were to have made the playoffs and maybe made it to the World Series, this week was World Series, and this would have been Game 7 tonight. There would have been a major scheduling catastrophe.
Well, there's no way that would have. They wouldn't have. That couldn't have happened. They would have.
Yeah, that game. They would have moved it somewhere.
Yeah, they would have had to move it to tomorrow or something.
But yeah, kudos, shout out to the defense. That goal line stop was amazing. Reminded me of the Syracuse game. Was it 05-06? This game kind of had the feelings of that game for a while. And shout out to Ontario Thompson, who had that punt block again.
Absolutely. Yep. He is he's a man out there. He's going to be a good one.
Is he seen any time on the D line yet this year? Or is he just mainly special teams?
Yeah, I don't think so yet, but he's making his mark on special teams. And once he gets his feet under him, and Iowa's going to be dealing with some graduation. Noah Shannon will be moving on. I know Joe Evans is an outside guy. YA Black, I think, is done after this year, although he may have an extra COVID year if he wants it. But yeah, I mean, Terrio's going to get his time, and hopefully alongside Aaron Graves, those two have an opportunity to be really good, stellar pass rushers, especially on the inside.
Yeah, and little shame on the NCAA needs to make their decision on Noah Shannon. I feel bad for the kid. He didn't really do anything, or didn't do anything illegal, or unlike the other people who have been suspended for making fake accounts and all that stuff. They just kind of robbed him of his last year, and I know Kirk in a couple press conferences ago was not happy with that either.
Right. Yeah, I agree. They've done a disservice to a lot of people, and he's one of them.
Yeah. Now, when Iowa had the ball on basically like the 2-inch line, got it out to about the 5, but if they didn't make any headway, would that have been a situation to where you might tell that long snapper, just snap the ball as far as you can over Taylor's head, not risk a punt block?
Well, Don answered that question earlier, although not with the theoretical caveat, Don, of being stuck at the inch-yard line. Would you consider a purposeful safety?
Yeah, I would certainly consider if the ball was on the 1, 2, or even 3-yard line. I'd consider it. The snapper to punt typically is 15 yards. So a ball snapped on the 5-yard line, obviously you got to worry about inadvertently stepping out with your heel in the back of the end zone. So once we got it outside the 5, I was confident we were just going to go ahead and punt away. And ironically, it was a poor punt. And of course, they returned it. So knowing all that now, we'd say we might as well take the safety and have a free kick. At least with the free kick, we have the option of punting or kicking, of course. And the way Corey's day had gone, very well decided to kick with Drew. Be a free kick from the 20, if you took the safety.
Yeah, that would have been interesting to see what Iowa would have done in that situation. I know in past games, I think they've taken the intentional safety. I think of the 6-4 game against Penn State in the mid-2000s.
Was there an intentional safety in that game? I didn't know that, but that's funny.
I think there was I think it was just to prevent something like that from happening.
Sure.
For either just tell the punter, hey, step out of bounds, or just fall.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Well, why even line up a punter back there, Don? Why couldn't you just line up no punter back there and just have the snapper just throw that thing into the stands?
Yeah, you could.
Anyways.
It would definitely made a couple highlight tapes.
Of course, we had a lot of game left to play at that point, right? That must have been early fourth quarter.
Yes, and by the way, Iowa State just added on a field goal. It's now 28-21, 4:27 to go in the game. They've got Kansas has a 2nd and 9. John Haycock's crew trying to get Nate Schillhouse's bunch another chance to get a touchdown on the board. The only turnover has proven to be the difference. Iowa State -1 in turnovers. And on 2nd and 9, a handoff and a run left. And boy, a big shot up the seam and a great tackle from behind made. I believe that's, Malik Verdon, or Malik Verdon, I think is actually pronounced his last name, with the tackle. So that's going to be 3rd and short for the Jayhawks, and a big down on 3rd and 3.
And we're closing in on 4 minutes, you say?
We're under 4. We've got 3:45 to go in the game now. And Iowa State needs to get off the field. They can give up another first down. They've got 2 timeouts on the board, but obviously time is of the essence. They do need 7. So anything else, Zach?
You wouldn't. I know you guys have discussed as well, with Washington and all them coming to the Big Ten next year, kind of just away from Iowa football in a sense. What do you think eventually will happen to someone like Notre Dame? I think Notre Dame's kind of left out in the cold in a sense. Grant, they can make their own schedule, but they're kind of without a conference still. Do you think eventually the Big Ten or someone like the SEC will try to say, hey, get in here?
Well, they've tried. I mean, those conferences have tried to get Notre Dame. I think eventually their hand is going to be forced, but apparently the money's not enough yet. And by the way, I don't mean to bog this show down with Iowa State coverage. A procedural penalty on Kansas has now pushed it back to 3rd and 8. 3:25 to go. Clock stopped now. 3rd and 8 at the Kansas 27-yard line. And
Kansas just got a first down.
Yeah, Zach's got to jump the gun. He's like 2 seconds ahead of me. He's got to jump the gun. First down for Kansas on a throw to Grimm to the sideline, and now they get a new set of downs. So Kansas moves the chains, and they're that much closer to a win at Iowa State, an Iowa State team that's near the top of that conference right now. So, all right. Anything else, Zach?
No, that's
right.
Good. Basketball season starts this week. Go Hawks, and also Iowa women's soccer tomorrow has a chance to pull a major upset in the Big Ten tournament by basically running the gamut against 3 great teams.
Great Hawkeye stuff ahead, Zach. Thank you for the call.
Yes. Have a good evening.
Thanks, sir. All right, so 1st and 10 for Kansas, and a 4-yard burst to the Kansas 42-yard line. Clock ticking, 2:30 to go. Jayhawks up 7, and it's 2nd down. So this is Iowa State's got to buckle up here. It's do or die at this point in the game. Maria Linez is in the chat. I'm assuming this is a relative of Iowa quarterback Marco Linez. I don't know that, but Maria, appreciate the compliment. And would love to hear how if you are related to Marco, if you feel comfortable sharing that. And it does sound like Marco, at least right now, is perhaps the new backup behind Deacon Hill. And, one snap away, one decision away from maybe being the guy. Another run for Kansas. They're now got 3rd and another 3 with under 2 minutes to play. It's 3rd and 3, and Iowa State's going to burn one of those final 2 timeouts. So this is it, Don. Game on the line now.
Got to get the stop now.
Got to get a stop now. And this is a good Jayhawk team. Keep in mind they're a top 25 team. So this would be a really good win for Iowa State. But Kansas, they are tough, man. I tell you, I'm really impressed with what Lance has done down there. And you mentioned your old assistant coach. It's been a hard job to accomplish great things at. And Les Miles found that out the hard way.
Right.
The last time they were really relevant was the Mark Mangino era, and that didn't last very long. So I don't know how much this will be sustained, but he's one of the, to me, he's got to be one of the biggest head coaching names to make a jump there is out there, right?
Exactly. That's an example of going into a job that's traditionally been difficult and still making it work.
Maria is Marco's grandmother. So welcome here, Maria. Good to have you here. Thank you for being a part of the show. And let's see. Brian wants to know, Don, why is it difficult to have a great defense and a great offense? Not many of those in college.
Well, the teams that win national championships in general do have great execution on both sides of the ball. Let's just think back to some of the Alabama teams, some of the Georgia teams, some of the Clemson teams that have won national titles. It's hard to win a national title if you're at all weak on one side. And those are examples of teams that have been good on both sides of the ball. So it can be done. Not easy, but it can be done.
Our RTI Threads player of the game mentioned this earlier. It is Jay Higgins, 12 tackles today. He and Nick Jackson had some big plays made once again. They've been a tremendous core. 12 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, including a sack for Jay Higgins. And, he waited his turn. And you hear about guys all the time that up and leave their schools because they're stuck behind a veteran player, not because they're doing anything wrong, just they got a generational talent or just somebody who's marginally better than them ahead of them. Only one guy can play. Only one guy can start. And when you have a generational player like Jack Campbell, you're not going to take him off the field very often. So Jay Higgins waited his turn, and he has been rewarded. And he's got a chance, Don, to play in the league. I mean, he's playing well enough right now. Physically, he's a guy who's got a chance. And I always had plenty of linebacker success stories at the next level. So congratulations to Jay Higgins, our RTI Threads player of the game. And yes, I do have my Cooper DeJean, my CD3 laces up logo apparel. This is the hoodie, this Cooper DeJean hoodie with his signature. So check it out. You can go to cd3lacesup.com. Again, that's cd3lacesup.com. And remember, RTI Threads, they're partnering with a bunch of small town Iowa athletes, but they're continuing to expand their partnerships jump on this company now because they are really affecting the NIL brand and just community. Carson Shire, Aiden Hall, Zach Lutmer, Aaron Graves, Cooper DeJean, and the list continues to grow. And it sounds like they're going to be expanding to some other sports here pretty soon. So definitely visit rtithreads.com and Cooper's official apparel, cd3lacesup.com. All right, Don, let me, we're here. I might as well just give you I can't do play-by-play. I don't think legally I can do play-by-play, but it is 3rd and 3 now out of a timeout, minute 54 at the Kansas 45. Here's the snap. It's going to be a play-action fake and a beautiful one and a catch by a tight end to seal the game at the Iowa State 46-yard line. And, boy, that's a beautiful call by your guy again, Don. Wow. Everybody was sold on the run up the middle. And it wasn't even a great pass. And I believe that's the tight end, KC, number 47, either tight end, fullback, something of that nature. Wasn't a great throw, didn't need to be. And it looks like John Haycock, Matt Campbell, and Nate Shieldhouse's boys are cooked for this week. It's now 1st and 10, Kansas. Inside.
Timeouts left now, or are they out?
Iowa State's got 1 timeout. So barring a stupid fumble, Kansas is running the football. Why run the football? Why are we running the football?
What do you mean? Why are they?
Why would you not take a knee? Why would you run the football right now?
Well, I mean, how much time's on the clock? I thought it's
There's
still
a minute 20. There's a minute 20. You take a knee.
Well, let's see. If you take a knee after first down, they'll take the timeout. So let's say that takes them to 1:15.
Well, no. Okay. Yeah, it takes them to 1:15. They call a timeout, take a knee. Now it's 2nd and 10. Take another knee.
Snap at the last second. That should take it down to where? About 35 seconds. You're right. They should be able to run it out.
Yeah, they're taking knees, or excuse me, they're running the football. Did they not see what happened with Miami and Georgia Tech a few weeks ago?
Get the word.
Wow. We've been complimentary of this Kansas staff, but Lance Leopold is upset about something on the sideline. He is going irate right now. The clock is stopped with a minute 20 to go. I'm not quite sure what the
they had
it all about.
They just
You're
used
right. So they must have burned the timeout. And now it's reflected on the scoreboard. Iowa State burned the timeout. Lance is upset about something. And now the quarterback is back there running around, and finally he falls down. So instead of taking a knee, he ran backwards and lost about 15 yards and slid down. I'm not sure what the point of that is. At this point, just take a knee. Mathematically, the game is over as long as you don't fumble a snap. So it's a 3rd down and 20 now with under a minute to go. And they can run this clock. Yeah, they can run it down to about 33 seconds, 32 seconds before taking a snap and a knee, which would bring it to 4th down and end the game. Iowa State, no timeout. So again, barring
they wouldn't have to even snap it on 4th down. Correct.
Barring some unforeseen occurrence with the snap, this game is in the bag for Kansas, and the Cyclones will move to 5-4 on the year. Still 1 game away from bowl eligibility for Matt Campbell's crew. And that will be 7th win of the season for Kansas. Their most in a single season since 2008. So impressive what Kansas has done.
Now, since they've beaten OU already, does that mean they're Texas and KU are most likely to play in the championship game, I wonder? Maybe it's too early to project.
Well, you're asking questions I don't have the answer for. As far as the Big 12 is concerned, I'm looking now. So, yeah, Iowa State is 4-2 now. Kansas is 4-2. Kansas State is 4-2. Oklahoma is 4-2. Oklahoma State is 5-1, and Texas is 5-1.
Okie State's still alive.
How is Okie State 5-1?
I don't know. Let's see. They've already played. They beat OU, right? Today.
They beat OU. They beat Cincinnati, beat West Virginia, beat Kansas, beat Kansas State. Their only loss, Don, is to Iowa State. How about that?
But they still have Texas up ahead.
No. They don't play Texas.
They don't play Texas.
No. They do not.
Yeah, because now the Big 12 has, 12 teams now?
I'll tell you what. Let me say this right now. Barring a collapse, Okie State's going to the Big 12 championship game. You want to know why? Listen to their remaining schedule. At Central Florida, at Houston, home against BYU.
That sounds pretty good.
They're going to the Big 12 title game right there, Don.
The mullet is going back to Arlington, huh? Or back to Arlington. I don't know if he's ever been. Has he ever been to Arlington?
That's a good question. I'm assuming he's been around a long time. Texas, by the way, they get Iowa State later this year. They get Texas Tech and they get TCU. And then OU, they get BYU on the road, TCU at home, and West Virginia at home. Kansas State at 4-2. They get Baylor at home, Kansas on the road, Iowa State at home. And boy, now West Virginia is also 4-2. Don, am I right in saying that?
I don't know.
How on earth is West Virginia? West Virginia is going to be 4-2 after this win over BYU, about 37-7 with 6 minutes to go on Fox. West Virginia is about to be 4-2. They're going to be tied for second in the Big 12 under Neil Brown. Incredible. And all these teams that Big 12 and Iowa State fans thought were going to save that conference, all those teams they brought in, how are they performing, Don? You want to know their overall record?
They're losing, right?
Let's figure out their overall. This is toward the tail end of our show. So Cincinnati has 2 wins. Houston has 3 wins. UCF has 4 wins.
No, that's conference wins or overall
That's
wins?
overall. That's overall. Okay. And then let's see. BYU's 5-3. UCF 4-5. Houston's 3-6, and Cincinnati is 2-7. So let's do the math there. Carry the 1. So 21 losses to 9 plus 5, 4. They're 14-21 overall. Those new teams are 14-21 overall, Don. And
that's a 400 winning percentage.
Here's their conference win records, or conference, their conference win-loss records. BYU 2-3, UCF 1-5, Houston 1-5, Cincinnati 0-6. Are you kidding me?
They didn't add a whole lot to the conference, did they?
Wow. Those teams desperately need Arizona. That conference needs Arizona to continue their climb because they have begun to look like a decent program again, and they desperately need Utah. That is going to be Utah joining the conference could be the one that kind of saves the conference in a way. I still think they're a notch below both the Big Ten and the SEC. Jonathan wants to know if Beth Getz has a say in who the next OC is, Don.
Well, I mentioned the other day on a talk show, I said a seasoned AD would, in a conversation, at least in a conversation with Kirk, would say, Kirk, it's only fair that you pick your next offensive coordinator, but I would appreciate being in the loop. I would appreciate you having conversation with me about your selection process, and I'm going to support you whatever you decide to do. But just as a courtesy, I would appreciate knowing what your thinking is from one candidate to the next. So in that way, the AD would maybe still have a little bit of influence as to who we're hiring.
Jason says if you're going to drink out of a mason jar, drink something fitting. It's water now. I do drink water out of a mason jar. So thank you for breaking down my choice of glassware. By the way, Drew, how about this? Oklahoma State, who's going to be, they're going to be, they're 5-1, Don. 5-1 atop the Big 12, and they got beat 33-7 by South Alabama.
That is crazy.
42-42 right now, USC and Washington, by the way.
Well, whoever hits the game-winning basket at the end of the game is going to win. Oh, that's basketball. Never mind.
Ryan Grubb's offense at Washington right now. We'll give everybody a final score update, and then we'll run through the final stats, and we'll wrap this thing up. Michigan leading Purdue in the fourth quarter, 34-6 over on MDC. On ABC, it's the 42-42 contest between USC and Washington. Alabama up now 2 touchdowns, 42-28 on LSU over on CBS. Oregon State just getting underway against Coach Prime and the Buffs. It's 0-0 over on ESPN News. I'm guessing that game moves over to ESPN now that Iowa State is done. A few games in our rearview mirror: Ohio State over Rutgers earlier, 35-16. Texas in overtime over KSU, 33-30. Ole Miss over Texas A&M, 38-35. Notre Dame going on the road and losing to Clemson, 31-23. Utah over Arizona State, 55-3. Army over the 25th ranked Air Force crew that had been undefeated prior to this game, 23-3 there. Georgia over Missouri, 30-21. Florida State over Pitt, 24-7. Oklahoma falling to Oklahoma State, 27-24. Maryland with a dominant, or I should say a pathetic loss, and a dominant victory for Penn State, 51-15. The Terrapins continue to just kind of self-destruct as they continue throughout their seasons.
Yeah.
Louisville continues to look good, 34-3 over Virginia Tech. Tulane over East Carolina in a tight one, 13-10. Oregon over Cal, 63-19. A lot of high scores over in the Pac-12. Kansas again over Iowa State, 28-21. UCLA, Arizona State just about to get underway. UCLA, Arizona just about to get underway. West Virginia right now leading BYU 37-7. Double overtime right now, Don, over on FS1 between Utah State and San Diego State. Utah State with the ball in double OT. It's 32-24, so they need a touchdown and a 2-point try. I always say Mark Stoops, and the Wildcats leading Mississippi State 24-3 in the fourth quarter over on the SEC network. North Carolina State leading Miami 10-6. Washington State up 7-0 on Stanford. Fresno State leading Boise State over on CBS Sports Network 10-0. And let's see, any other notable games that I missed? I think that's just about it. Illinois over Minnesota 27-26, of course. Probably missed a Big Ten game in there somewhere, but go ahead, Don.
I have a question for you, Corey. Do you know how the K-State Texas game went into overtime? Did you hear what happened in regulation?
I did not.
K-State had a chance to break a tie. It was 27-27. All they needed to do was kick a PAT. This was in, I think, the last minute or two of the game. And the holder muffed the snap and kind of panicked and picked the ball up and ran with it and got tackled. And that's the only reason it went to overtime. Now, maybe they would have gone ahead 28-27 and Texas would have beaten them in regulation, but maybe not. Who knows? I mean, at that point, I'll put it this way. I'm sure the Longhorn fans were thrilled that it got to go to overtime because it sounded like K-State was going to win it in regulation.
How did Indiana beat Wisconsin? I don't know if those guys are just playing for Tom Allen's job, but I can tell you how.
Well, I know one thing. There was a certain running back that didn't play at all for Wisconsin.
Yeah, but Jackson Aker is a decent back. In fact, they ran decently well. Jackson Aker ran for 48 yards, averaged 4.4 a carry. His backup had 10 carries for 48 yards, 4.8 a carry. There was another guy who had 1 carry for 18 yards. The problem was they were -2 in turnovers. Indiana played clean football, no turnovers, and won 20-14.
Well, for all we know, the running backs coughed up both of them. We don't know. I'll just say this. They missed their starting running back. They miss him a lot.
Brandon brings up apparently Utah State just got an interception and they win in overtime. And then, of course, Michigan State over Nebraska, Don, 20-17. Arkansas over Florida, 39-36 in overtime. I love looking at these certain scores from around the country. Isaac Tesla had 4 catches for 31 yards. Remember, that's the D2 tight or D2 wide receiver that we thought had a chance to come to Iowa. He ended up picking Arkansas. They're not having a great season at 3-6, but they do win today in Gainesville. Tesla on the season, for anybody that cares, 21 receptions for 217 yards, 1 touchdown. So he's certainly not lighting the world on fire. And as it relates to the other Iowa receiver, or one of the other Iowa receivers that left after last season, let me find Kansas State. I know Keegan Johnson has just been dealing with unbelievable injuries all year. Where is his score here? Yeah, so in that loss to Texas, again, 33-30 on the road at Texas. I'm seeing if Keegan Johnson recorded any stats. He did. Wow. How about this, Don? Keegan Johnson, 7 receptions for 70 yards and a touchdown. That's what we expect. That's what I expected when he left for KSU. He just dealt with so many injuries, and I wish him all the best. But 7 receptions for 70 yards and a touchdown for Keegan. That's a really good stat line. Hopefully that continues. Young man deserves to see some success, but he had one catch prior to today in a Kansas State uniform, and he gets 7 for 70 yards and a touchdown.
And you're saying that was primarily because he's been injured pretty much all year.
Absolutely, yes. And to do it at Texas is that much more impressive. All right, final stat look at Iowa Northwestern. Again, the 10-7 victory for the Hawkeyes in Wrigley Field. It's amazing. They were able to play this game. You had the weird field issues near the dugout on the goal line stand. They got through it, continued to repair the field. It seemed like play after play. And again, ultimately, it came down to a 52-yard field goal, a dart from Drew Stevens, Iowa kicker Drew Stevens. LaShawn Williams ended up with 79 yards on the ground on 24 carries for 3.3 carries. So you'd like to get that average up, but still 79 yards, and he runs hard. Jazz Patterson played today. Caleb Johnson did not. Jazz with 21 yards on 8 carries. Cooper DeJean had 1 carry for 8 yards in his first appearance on offense. And Deontay Vines was credited with 1 carry for 4 yards as well. Addison Estringa led all receivers with 3 targets and 3 catches for 15 yards, Don. 1 touchdown for Addison on the play action at the goal line. Deontay Vines had 2 catches for 9 yards. LaShawn Williams, 2 catches for -5 yards. Caleb Brown, 1 catch for 23 yards. The 1 explosive play in the game for Iowa. Hayden Large had a catch. How about Hayden Large, Don? That was a nice run for the big boy.
Yeah. Yes, it was. He was good after the catch. 15 yards
range
on that play. How about Northwestern? Northwestern played all day. Their long gain for the day was 18 yards. Another receiver, Cam Johnson's touchdown reception was 14 yards, as I recall. Wasn't that the touchdown pass? 14? Maybe not. Maybe it's a shorter pass. He had 3 catches for 30 yards. I can tell you shortly here.
Yep. Cam Johnson had a touchdown catch.
Yeah, it was only a 5-yard pass. So the 14-yarder came some other time during the game. But
Bryce Kurtz had the 18-yarder.
No, Johnson, yeah, Kurtz did. Yeah, you're right. But their longest run for the day was 9 yards. Ours was 10. And as you mentioned, only 1 explosive play all day. It belonged to us. Let's hear it for number 81.
Torrey Taylor, 6 punts, 234 yards total. Average of just 39 yards a punt. Did pin 2 inside the 20. One was kind of off of a weird punt, but got the job done. Cooper DeJean had just 2 punt returns for 17 yards, along of 12. Had 1 called back. He's exceptional in that role, Don. He's unique and he's exceptional in that role.
Let me say this. One time he reminded me of Tim Dwight. You'll probably remember the whole play. The ball bounded in front of him. This guy kind of slowed down. And then he grabs it and takes off with it. And the guy got fooled. And that maybe that was brought back because of a push in the back. I can't remember. But anyway, it was a gutsy move on his part because the tackler was not very far away at all. Maybe no more than 2 yards. He was close.
Iowa finally outgained an opponent in first downs. That's an incredible stat, given how difficult the offense seemed to look out there. 14 first downs for Iowa, 12 for Northwestern. And Iowa did beat Northwestern in rushing. Net yards rushing, 104 for Iowa, 89 for Northwestern. 65 passing yards for Iowa, 81 for Northwestern.
Total offense, they beat us by 1.
Yeah, 169 to 170 in favor of the Wildcats. Iowa did also lose in punting yards, 234 punting yards to 304, Don. So we always like to be on top of that stat, but we didn't get the job done today. Pardon my sense of humor for a moment. And then also, of course, turnovers are always big. Where are the
And the question was +1. there was only the one pick.
Right. Could have
Although
easily been.
We were lucky a time or two.
Could have been +3, and it's hard to imagine winning if you're -3.
That's true.
So, and then of course I mentioned Jay Higgins, 6 tackles. He was our RTI Threads player of the game. 12 tackles, 6 solo, 6 assisted, 1 sack, 2 tackles for loss. Nick Jackson had 7 tackles, including a sack, tackle for loss. Deontay Craig, I thought he played maybe his best game. 6 tackles for Deontay. He was active. Xavier Wampa with 5. Sebastian Castro with 5. Jamari Harris with 5. I was glad to see Jamari make a big play there at the end. He did give up a touchdown pass on Northwestern's only score in the game. And I'm just looking through the participation report. DeJean Lee did play. For anybody wondering, he did play on special teams. That's noteworthy because he has been banged up. That's an indication that he's healthy. We also saw, I'm just looking through here, John Nestor continues to play, the true freshman out of Chicago. Good to see him get some time in his home city. Cade Piper played, freshman O-lineman. That's an interesting one. I'm assuming maybe these weren't his first snaps, but he is listed on the participation chart. True freshman Zach Ortworth, a tight end from St. Louis, played. Rusty Van Wetzinga played as well, the backup fullback. His brother will be joining the crew here in a year or two. Cohen and Tringer, sophomore, or I should say redshirt freshman, also got some time. And I'm just looking to see other young names. I know people are interested in the young names. Jamison Hines played, which is good to know because that would indicate health and depth at corner. Anything I'm missing, Don? I think we covered this thing inside and out.
Can't think of a thing. You know what's exciting is we're looking at November 11th, next Saturday, and we're playing a game in Kinnick that has a huge significance to it. And this time of the year, sometimes your favorite team is playing in a game that really doesn't matter, but ours matters a lot, and that's what it should be every November. Normally it is, and this year's no different. The game has a lot of reward associated with it, so we got to find a way to win it.
Don, talk a little bit about Keys against Rutgers. You talked earlier about how they do not give up the football easily. They value ball security. Of course, turnovers are going to be a huge storyline in every game for Iowa from here on out. And they do have playmakers across the board. They typically have skill position guys. I think about a guy like Pacheco, who's now in the league. Wasn't he Rutgers? Well, not.
Yes, he was. He was, and I like him a lot, and he's doing well with the Chiefs too.
He is, and Gavin Wimsatt has some skill set as well that could put the Iowa linebackers, certainly defensive line, on high alert. How does Iowa avoid another disappointing home loss next Saturday?
Well, I think the one priority in my mind, above and beyond anything else, would be turnover margin. Because if you lose on turnovers to Rutgers, then you have a good chance of losing the game. Because they typically don't turn it over much. So if you do, you're in big trouble. Because they're sound on defense. Their defense doesn't give up much. Whatever you get, you earn. You know, you have to execute to move the ball. That's obviously going to be a challenge for us. So we need to start fast. We're not good at playing from behind. We know that. So we have to start fast. We have to win on field position and win on turnovers. That'll take us a long way, those two things.
Next Saturday, the 11th of November, Iowa's still playing for a berth in the Big Ten championship game. They control their own destiny, right, Don?
Yes.
Right in saying that now? Those other games
We've
are...
been out. The best Minnesota can do is finish one game behind us.
And I think this is Mark Rogers in the chat. I'm assuming this is Mark Rogers in the chat over on the Iowa channel. He says, longest and best post-game show on the planet. Think I checked in 3 to 4 hours ago. Great job, guys. You're the best. Appreciate that, Mark. And he adds in, Rutgers has definitely taken another step this year, probably the most improved team in the conference. And Mark is an Ohio State guy from heart and head, I think, and roots. And they got challenged today by a gritty Scarlet Knights team. So Iowa will have its hands full next week in Kinnick Stadium. And 2:30, BTN. We'll see who the Is this the first BTN game? Maybe the first game against Utah State was BTN, Don, but it feels like we haven't had a BTN game all year.
I can't remember. I do know this. We need to bring our A game, and our fans need to bring their A game also. We need a distinct home field advantage.
When you say we need to bring our A game, you talking about you and me?
Yeah, you need to bring your A game, and I'll try to do the same.
Okay, sounds good. Also, Charles, one final question. He says, hypothetical, would you put in Cooper DeJean at quarterback, substitute him on D to see what he could do on offense? Has mobility as well.
Substitute him on defense? I don't think I'd substitute him on defense.
Yeah,
because I'd be afraid that the guy in might not be good enough.
I agree. Yeah, I don't think you take him off the field if you can help it. And I know you run the risk of, we're not talking about putting him on the field for a bunch of snaps each game, but I think it's at least worth a look at more than a couple snaps. It was good to see them bring him out there for a couple of snaps. And I'm still waiting for Brian Ferentz to channel his no regrets game. Maybe that's in the Big Ten championship game if they get there. But man, I would hope
we didn't see it today, did we?
No, we did not. Final score 10-7. The Hawks over the Northwestern Wildcats. Coach Don Patterson, thank you as always for being here. The last 3.5 hours have been a joy as always. And we'll talk Iowa Rutgers here this next week. And we'll see you back in Kinnick next week and back on the show for, we're already into we're going to be at this time next week. Second game into November and the final quarter of the season. So it flies by as it always does, Don. But thank you for another 3.5 hours, and we'll talk to you soon.
I look forward to it, Corey. Take care.
All right, folks. For Coach Don Patterson, I'm Corey Bratt here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. Remember to hit that like button. Subscribe, folks. More content on the way and basketball coverage with Gary Close on the horizon. Keep it locked right here from the Hawkeye of the Storm. We'll talk to you soon.